Chapter 44:16. There was dead silence in the hall. All eyes were fixed on Great Elder Wen Qingmu. They were shocked and stunned. No one had expected that Wen Qingmu would actually kill Wen Qingxun with his own hands. Taiwan Xiang stood rooted to the ground and could not react for a long time. Just now he was still hesitating on how to deal with Wen Qingxun. Wen Qingxun had betrayed the Wen clan and helped an outsider. It was a heinous crime, but he was still Wen Qingmu's younger brother. If Wen Qingmu wanted to protect him, most of the elders would be inclined to spare his life. But now, Wen Qingxun had been killed by Wen Qingmu. This was a scene that no one had expected. Great Elder, It took a long time for everyone to react. Several elders looked at Wen Qingmu, their lips trembling, but they did not know what to say. Wen Qingxun colluded with outsiders to harm the Wen clan. He deserves to die, Wen Qingmu said solemnly. But his trembling eyes showed that he was extremely heartbroken. Wen Xiang's eyes narrowed. He was speechless. Nie Tian's reaction was normal. Although he did not expect Wen Qingmu to be so ruthless, he saw another possibility in Wen Qingmu's eyes. Perhaps this was not a righteous act, but a murder to silence a witness. Of course, this was only his guess, and he could not say it out loud. Nie Tian could tell that Wen Qingmu was far more important to the Wen clan than Wen Xiang, the clan leader. Just as Wen Qingmu had said, without him, Wen Xiang would not have become the clan leader. Then was that so? Doubts arose. If Wen Qingmu did not care about the clan leader's position, what did he care about? If he was really killing Wen Qingmu, it would mean that he had betrayed the Wen clan. What did Gia's sect offer Wen Qingmu to make him betray them? At the same time, Nie Tian was shocked by Great Elder's strength. He could easily defeat Fourth Elder, who was under the influence of the cursed seals. After a while, the hall fell silent. Great Elder, the people of Gia's sect have captured my father. What should we do? Wen Xiang's eyes darkened as he looked at Wen Qingmu and asked. Judging from the current situation, Wen Ho's capture by the Gia sect was a foregone conclusion. What should the Wen family do next? Wen Qingmu furrowed his brows and swept his gaze across the other elders as he asked, How do you think we should handle this matter? All the elders lowered their heads, and no one said a word. Damn it! Wen Xiang already knew the result when he saw this scene. Wen Greenwood did not directly reply, instead throwing the question to the others. His meaning was clear. He did not want to save Wen Ho. The hall was silent, and the atmosphere was stifling. The previous clan leader has been captured. This is a blatant provocation to the Wen clan. I think we should kill our way to the Gia sect and rescue the previous clan leader. In the end, it was the 8th elder who had the worst temper, who spoke first despite his injuries. 8th elder's temperament was impulsive and extremely hot-blooded. He spoke the words in his heart. However, when he finished speaking, the others remained silent. No one responded. What? Don't you want to save him? 8th elder's face darkened as he asked in a cold tone. 8th elder? Of course we want to save him. However, the problem is, with the current Wen clan, how are we going to fight against the Gia sect? The 2nd elder stood up and sighed. Wen Xiang's gaze swept across the 2nd elder as his face darkened. He knew that the 2nd elder was the Great Elder's most loyal supporter. What he had said was equivalent to saying on behalf of the Great Elder. 2nd elder, what do you mean by that? Are you saying that just because the one clan is weak, we're not going to save the previous clan leader? Wen Luan shouted angrily as he stepped forward. The Great Elder frowned and glared at Wen Luan. Wen Luan stepped down. Wen Xiang shouted in a cold tone. He did not want to see Wen Luan provoke Wen Qingmu. If Wen Luan wanted to control the Wen clan in the future, he would need Wen Qingmu's support. 2nd uncle. Wen Luan's face was full of unwillingness, as he did not think that he was wrong. This is a family matter. It's not up to a junior like you to comment on it. Wen Xiang frowned and looked angry. Wen Luan frowned. Even though he was unwilling, he still stepped down. Since the previous clan leader was captured, we naturally have to save him. However, you know the current situation of the Wen clan. If we really want to fight against the Gia sect, it's no different from hitting a rock with an egg. I think that if the previous clan leader was here, he wouldn't want to see such a scene. Wen Qingmu let out a long sigh and said earnestly, I think that this matter needs to be considered at length. May I ask, Great Elder, what further consideration do you have? Wen Xiang was obviously a little angry. After all, the one who was kidnapped was his father. Wen Qingmu frowned and said, the Gia sect kidnapped the previous clan leader instead of killing him. This means that there's still room for negotiation. I'm willing to personally go to the Gia sect and see what the Gia sect is up to. Wen Xiang was stunned. He didn't expect Wen Qingmu to say that. But as soon as Wen Qingmu's words fell, the scene became chaotic. Great Elder, the Gia sect has the ambition of wolves. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. Yes. Since the Gia sect dared to harm the previous clan leader, of course, they would dare to do it to you. First Elder's action is akin to charging into a dragon's lair alone. You should reconsider before acting. Everyone said that they didn't agree with Wen Qingmu's suggestion. I've already made up my mind, so there's no need for all of you to say anything. Wen Qingmu had a calm expression as he nodded and spoke. The others were stunned and speechless. Wen Xiang's expression was a little awkward. He didn't know what to say. He was indeed a little angry just now. However, Wen Qingmu's action made him feel embarrassed. Family head, that's all for now. I'll set off now. Wen Qingmu looked at Wen Xiang with a resolute expression. If Wen Xiang continued to persuade him, it would be too fake. He didn't say anything else and bowed slightly. Wen Qingmu nodded and turned to leave. Everyone looked at the back of the figure outside the hall. Their faces were a little ugly, and their hearts were sour and sweet. Elders, let's disperse first. Wen Xiang's gaze swept across the crowd as he spoke. Then, he took the lead and left the hall. Nie Tian, Wen Luan, and the others also followed Wen Xiang out of the hall. On the way, Wen Luan could not help but ask, second uncle, do you think that the Grand Elder will be able to save Grandfather? Wen Xiang let out a long sigh, not saying anything. Patriarch 1, don't you have any suspicions that the Grand Elder killed the Fourth Elder? At this moment, Nie Tian finally voiced out his doubts. Beacon Emperor, what do you mean by that? Wen Xiang's face darkened. He was disgusted. I just asked casually. Nie Tian saw that Wen Xiang had such a big reaction, so he forced a smile and covered it up. Wen Luan naturally understood the meaning behind Nie Tian's words. His complexion was also very unsightly. Clearly, he trusted Wen Qingmu very much. I want to pay a visit to the Wind Demon's clan. If you have time, accompany me. The crowd continued to walk. Suddenly, Nie Tian looked at Wen Luan and said, Chapter 44:17. Visit the Wind Demons? Wen Luan was stunned. He did not expect Nie Tian to visit the Wind Demon's clan at this time. Sir Beacon Emperor, if you wish to visit the Wind Demon's clan, please go ahead. Wen Luan still has something to do, so he can't accompany you, Wen Xiang said cold with a dark expression. Very obviously, Nie Tian's visit to the Wind Demon's clan had aroused Wen Xiang's disgust. Wen Luan's face stiffened, feeling a little awkward. Nie Tian didn't mind. Instead, he laughed and said, Master Wen, I did visit the Wind Demon's clan to rope them in, and I heard that the Wind Demon's clan and the Gia sect are very close. Maybe they know something. Of course, he understood why Wen Xiang was angry. Nie Tian gang had come to rope in the Wen family, but Wen Ho had disappeared. At this time, Nie Tian was going to visit the Wind Demon's clan, obviously to rope them in. Such as this behavior was indeed a little inappropriate. Wen Xiang must be thinking, you Beacon Emperor think that my Wen family is no good, so you're trying to rope in the Wind Demon's clan. You're changing your face too quickly. Nie Tian understood Wen Xiang's feelings, but he didn't want to explain anything. Wen Xiang's face was gloomy. He glanced at Nie Tian and then said to Wen Lun, see me later. With that, he turned around and left. Beacon Emperor, Grandfather is missing and second uncle is in a bad mood. Please don't take it to heart. Wen Luan was a bit embarrassed as he explained for Wen Xiang. I understand. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, why don't you go find Clan Master Wen first? I'll wait for you at the gate of the Wen Mansion. Whether you can accompany me to visit Wind Ghost or not, you'll have to come find me. Yes. Wen Luan agreed and turned to look for Wen Xiang. It was true that they were from the one clan, but they were also disciples of the Feng Tianming sect. It was difficult to be stuck in the middle. Nie Tian Fan Zhong, and the others quickly arrived at the entrance of the one residence. They did not leave immediately. Instead, they waited for Wenluan. Sir Beacon Emperor, do you really think that when Qingmu is suspicious? Fan Zhong asked Nia Tian softly when he saw that there was no one around. I don't know much about this person, but I always feel that his action of placing righteousness before family is a little strange. Nia Tian nodded and said truthfully. From when Qingmu appeared in the lobby, Nia Tian felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Judging from everyone's reaction, Wen Qingmu and Wen Qingchen's relationship should be very good, and Wen Xiang's dilemma further proved this point. The scene of Wen Qingmu killing Wen Qingchen shocked everyone. Clearly, they did not expect Wen Qingmu to be able to do it. Normally, even brothers who weren't that close wouldn't do such a thing. Moreover, Wen Qingchen would not die. As long as Wen Qingmu spoke, Wen Qingchen could at least live. Most what made Nia Tian feel strange was that apart from fear, Wen Qingchen's eyes before he died were filled with doubt. That expression seemed to be asking, "How dare you kill me?" But judging from Wen Qingmu's aura, he shouldn't be Mr. Fourth. Plus, his position in the Wen family is so high, and he has no interest in the family leader position. I really can't think of a reason for him to betray the Wen family. Fan Zhong shook his head, clearly thinking the same thing as Nia Tian. It's also strange that when Qingmu chose to go to Gia's sect alone. Just then, Tang 13 spoke up. I observed him carefully. He was very calm and confident, as if he had a card up his sleeve. He must be very sure that there would be no danger in going to Gia's sect. Nia Tian nodded. He had sensed it as well. If Nia Tian was the only one suspicious, or perhaps he was too suspicious. Now that all three of them suspected Wen Qingmu, it meant that there was something wrong with him. But yes, these were all their guesses. Without any evidence, they couldn't even say it out loud. Wen Qingmu's position in the Wen family was too high. There was no doubt about it. Peace after a while, when Luan's figure appeared. What do you think? Can you come with me? Nia Tian asked with a faint smile. Wen nodded with a smile. Second uncle agreed to let me go. He also asked me to bring a letter to clan leader Feng. Oh, Nia Tian smiled, thinking that this letter was most likely a letter asking for help. He had heard before that the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan had a good relationship. They could be considered family friends. Let's go. Wen Luan nodded with a smile. Lan Xing and Lan Che followed closely behind him. They relied on him and protected him at the same time. The Wind Demons clan was different from normal aristocratic families. They lived in a place called Wind Ghost Valley, located in a mountain range. Wen Luan, I heard that the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan are family friends. Is that true? Nia Tian asked on the way. Yes. Wen Luan nodded and said, a long time ago, the ancestors of the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan were very good friends. The two ancestors even made an agreement that the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan would rise or fall together. It's just that this agreement was too old. As it was passed down from generation to generation, the binding force of the agreement became weaker and weaker. Especially a few generations ago, the relationship between the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan was almost broken. Broken? Why? Nia Tian frowned and asked in surprise. Generally speaking, aristocratic families attached great importance to friendship. After all, this kind of friendship between families was very rare. If both sides had someone to rely on, the family would be able to pass on better. Sir Beacon Emperor might not know, but the Wen family and the Wind Demons clan were originally hidden families, almost completely isolated from the world. Wen Luan sighed and continued, but about 1,000,000 years ago, a traitor appeared in the Wen family. He left the family and went on a killing spree in the 7 Cultivators' sacred world, causing everyone to panic. At that time, the head of the Wen family had no choice but to send 3 elders to capture the traitor. However, he did not expect the traitor to be so strong that he killed all 3 elders. The head of the Wen family was furious and decided to personally capture the traitor. However, the head of the Wen family did not have full confidence, so he asked the head of the Wind Demons clan for help. Unexpectedly, the head of the Wind Demons clan refused. The head of the Wen family was very angry, but he had no choice but to capture the traitor alone. However, he was injured by the traitor instead. Later on, the sect master of the Fire Heaven Fate sect took action and finally killed the traitor. In order to repay the kindness, the head of the Wen family decided to lead the family into the world. Thus, the alliance between the Fire Heaven Fate sect and the Wen family was formed. Hearing this, Tian could not help but nod. He did not expect that a traitor would appear in the Wen family, ultimately causing the Wen family to enter the world. Next, Tian frowned and asked Wenlun, "What about the Wind Demons clan? Why did they also enter the world?" "I don't know about this." Wenlun shook his head and said, "The Wind Demons clan entered the world a bit later than the Wen family, but not by too much. In fact, in the past, many disciples of the Wind Demons clan also joined the Fire Heaven Fate sect. However, for some unknown reason, all the people of the Wind Demons clan withdrew from the Fire Heaven Fate sect. In the recent tens of thousands of years, with the rise of the Gia sect, the Wind Demons clan began to get closer to the Gia sect. Second uncle did not want to alienate the relationship with the Wind Demons clan, so he betrothed big sister to the genius of the Wind Demons clan, Fengkun. The two clans used marriage as a way to maintain their relationship. Wenlun couldn't help but sigh at this point. In fact, he did not approve of this method, especially when the Wen family was in a weak state. Chapter 44:18. After Wenlun finished speaking, his expression was somewhat dejected. The so-called marriage alliance looked glamorous on the surface, but in reality, it was just swallowing humiliation. At least from Wenlun's point of view, the Wen clan's action was inappropriate. To a certain extent, it was a show of weakness and humility. I didn't expect the Wen clan and the Wind Demons clan to have such a thing. Tian could feel Wenlun's mood. He frowned slightly and asked, "How is the relationship between the Wen and Feng clans now? Even if there was a marriage alliance, the relationship between the two clans should be much better." However, Wenlun shook his head and smiled bitterly. In recent years, the Wen clan's reputation has been getting weaker and weaker, while the Wind Demons clan has been getting stronger and stronger. Although Big Sister and Fengkun are engaged, the Feng clan has never come to propose. I'm afraid that they're already thinking of a way to break off the engagement. Tian's expression became somewhat ugly. Look, the situation that the Wen clan was facing was much more difficult than he had expected. Wenlun glanced at Tian and added, "Actually, Big Sister doesn't like that Fengkun either. Although he is very talented, he is sinister and arrogant. He is definitely not a good person." "Yes, I has also heard of the name Fengkun. He should be one of the strongest among the younger generation of the seventh cultivator of true virtue." Fan Zhong also opened his mouth and said in a heavy tone, "I heard that Fengkun used to be a disciple of the Gia sect. However, he had a conflict with his fellow disciples and killed many of them. The Gia sect had no choice but to let Fengkun return to their clan." When Fan Zhong mentioned this matter, Wenlun's expression changed slightly. He seemed to be a little nervous. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "I heard that the Gia sect has already extended an invitation to Fengkun. As long as Fengkun is willing to join the Gia sect, he will immediately become an inner court elder." "Inner court elder?" Fan Zhong's eyes trembled. He seemed a little surprised, but after thinking about it, he smiled and said, "The Gia sect is really generous. There are only a dozen inner court elders in the sect, and they're all powerhouses of the older generation who have made great contributions to the sect. I didn't expect that they would actually be willing to give Fengkun an inner court elder. However, I feel that the position of an inner court elder might not be able to tempt Fengkun. An inner elder of the Gia sect might have a high status, but it was only comparable to a protector of the Feng Tianming sect. Since Fengkun was already an outstanding figure of the seven cultivators' sacred world and the #1 genius of the Wind Ghost clan, the position of patriarch of the Feng clan was already within his grasp. Naturally, he would not be tempted by an inner elder. Not even the position of an inner sect elder can move him. Wenlun couldn't help being shocked. He had thought that once the Gia sect laid out the conditions, Fengkun would agree immediately. It seemed like he had underestimated Feng Kuan. You're underestimating Feng Kuan. I guess that his strength isn't any weaker than the inner court elders of Gia's sect. Fan Zhong glanced at Wen Luan and smiled bitterly. Is he that strong? Wen Luan was stunned once again, his face filled with shock. Wen Kuan's age was similar to his, but his strength was actually catching up to the older generation's powerhouses? After hearing what Flagmaster Fan said, I really want to meet this person. Yet Tian smiled, and there was some anticipation in his eyes. Fan he nodded his head and smiled, thinking to himself that maybe the Beacon Emperor could fight Feng Kuan to a draw. Half a day later, under Wen Luan's lead, Niet Tian and the others arrived at the Wind Ghost Valley where the Wind Demons clan resided. Massed standing at the foot of the peak and looking down at the Wind Ghost Valley, one could see many spacious residences in the forest of peaks in the distance. This at first glance, the Wind Demons clan didn't look like a clan, but more like a sect. Long, long ago, the Wind Demons clan was very famous in the All Heaven Saints world. They were even one of the 10 great clans. Only later on, when the power of their bloodline weakened, the strength of their clan also weakened. Thus, they came to the sacred world of 7th cultivators and became a hidden clan. Let's go. Wen Luan nodded and led the way. A moment later, everyone arrived at the entrance of the Wind Ghost Valley. As soon as they landed, more than a dozen black-clothed cultivators appeared and directly surrounded them. Who are you? The leading black-clothed cultivator shouted in a cold tone. I am Wen Luan from a Wen clan, and this is the Beacon King from the Beacon Heaven Fate School. We are here to visit Chief Feng. Please pass on a message. Wen Luan signaled for everyone to not act recklessly before stepping forward. The leading black-clothed cultivator responded in a cold tone. He then asked another black-clothed cultivator to return to the valley and report. However, before the black-clothed cultivator could move, a powerful voice came from the valley. Sir Beacon Emperor has personally come to the Wind Ghost Valley. Please forgive me for not being able to personally welcome you. The voice was like a great bell, and it carried a surging momentum as it fell into everyone's ears. You are too polite. Nietian did not know the identity of the person who spoke, so he could not address him casually. He could only respond with a faint smile. Sir Beacon Emperor, I is at the 9-Wind platform. Please enter the valley. The powerful voice sounded again, and then disappeared like a gust of wind. Sir Beacon Emperor, please. The black-clothed cultivators in front of him finally understood that Nietian's identity was not to be trifled with. The leading black-clothed cultivator stepped forward and bowed. Nietian nodded and entered the valley with everyone. Although the Wind Ghost Valley was called a valley, it was actually a continuous mountain range. However, the mountains were short and located in the middle of the mountain range. From afar, it looked like a canyon. After entering the Wind Ghost Valley, Nietian immediately felt that the aura in the surrounding space was much thicker than outside. His mood also improved a lot. Under the lead of the black-clothed cultivator, Nietan and the others quickly arrived at the 9-Wind platform. High the tall pavilion stood on the peak of the mountain. It was like a sharp sword, incomparably sharp. A white-robed old man stood in the pavilion. He was short and skinny, and he looked kind and amiable, giving off a very amiable feeling. But beside the white-clothed old man stood a young man in green. He was not tall, but there was a strange feeling of power in his body. It was very terrifying. When Wen Luan saw the young man in green, he could not help but tremble. He was quite surprised. He did not expect to meet Feng Kuan here. Nietian's eyes slightly sank. He quickly glanced at the young man in green and smiled faintly. Although it was only for a moment, but he could feel the terrifying power in Feng Kuan's body. He was definitely an extraordinary genius. Moreover, Feng Kuan's body had a murderous aura that could not be hidden. It was obviously cultivated from killing people for a long time. Beacon Emperor, that old man, is the first elder of the Feng clan. Wen Luan calmed down and secretly transmitted his voice to Nietian. Nietian nodded slightly. Since he did not see the Feng clan master, it was more like meeting the first elder. Welcome, Beacon Emperor. I was not able to welcome you earlier. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you. The first elder of the Feng clan, Feng Yaosheng smiled brightly and nodded slightly at Nie Tian. First Elder, you are too kind. Nie Tian also walked confidently to the Nine-Wind platform. The Beacon Heaven Fate School is really weak. The Beacon King is a piece of trash who hasn't even reached heaven since. At this time, before Feng Yaosheng could speak, Feng Kuan, who was standing to the side, directly spoke. His eyes swept over Nie Tian with a disdainful look. Chapter 44:19. Feng Kuan looked at Nie Tian with disdain in his eyes. Fan Wen-zhong, when Luan and the others saw this, their expressions changed. No matter what, Nie Tian was still the sect master of the Feng Tian Fate School. Even though his cultivation level was not high, his status was not something Feng Kuan could compare to. Thus, Feng Kuan's humiliation was equivalent to slapping the school's face. Moreover, although Nie Tian's cultivation level was not high, his combat strength was far beyond that of an ordinary person. Not to mention others. Even Feng Kuan might not be a match for Nie Tian. Feng Kuan, don't be rude. Feng Yaosheng's face sank as he reprimanded coldly. Although he was reprimanding Nie Tian, Feng Yaosheng clearly did not care much. Moreover, the way he looked at Nie Tian had also changed. It should be that the latter's cultivation had disappointed him. It doesn't matter. Nie Tian smiled faintly, not caring at all. He had seen many people like Kuan, so he could just ignore him. Viewed in Feng Kuan's eyes, Nie Tian's calmness was a concession, which made him even more insatiable. I heard that the Beacon Emperor had just defeated the Gia sect's provocation. I wonder if it's true? Feng Kuan glanced at Nie Tian coldly and said in a strange tone. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. I didn't expect the Wind Demon's clan to be so well informed in this forest. Beacon Emperor, you must be joking. Our Feng clan also has disciples in the Gia sect and the Beacon Heaven Fate sect, so of course we would know about such a big thing. Feng Yaosheng smiled and looked at Nie Tian with a fiery gaze. He was looking forward to the latter's next words. It's in fact, when they heard that Nie Tian had defeated the Gia sect, most of the Wind Demon's clan did not believe it. In fact, the rumors had described Nie Tian's strength to the point where he could destroy the heavens and the earth, which was simply unbelievable. What was even more ridiculous was that it was rumored that Nie Tian's cultivation was only at the 9th level of the heavenly tribulation, and he had yet to step into the heavenly insight realm. This was even more unbelievable. Feng Yaosheng had experienced too many things in his life. Of course, he knew that many legendary rumors were largely exaggerated. Before he saw Nie Tian, he still had some expectations in his heart. When he saw with his own eyes that Nie Tian was really just a heaven tribulation sage king, the expectations in his heart turned into disappointment. Wind Yaosheng did not believe that a Saint King martial artist could defeat the top 3 genius of Gia sect, Xianya. It was even rumored that when Nie Tian and Xianya fought, Nie Tian didn't even draw his sword. He only used his sword intent to make Xianya admit defeat. Of course, Feng Yaosheng could sense that Nie Tian was a swordsman, but he did not think that Nie Tian's sword intent was extraordinary. When Feng Kuan looked at Nie Tian with even more disdain in his eyes. He had once cultivated in Gia sect for a short period of time and had fought with Xianya. Although the latter was defeated by him, he was also injured. Although he had not seen Xianya for a long time, he believed that Xianya's strength was definitely not weak. Nie Tian was merely at the 9th level of the heavenly tribulation. Not to mention defeating Xianya. It was already very impressive if he could survive Xianya's attack. I did indeed defeat a few people from Gia sect, but they were too weak. They all admitted defeat before I even drew my sword. Nie Tian glanced at Feng Kuan and could naturally guess what the latter was thinking. Oh, I didn't expect Lord Beacon Emperor to be so strong even though his cultivation is not high. Feng Yaosheng's eyes darkened as he laughed. When anyone could hear the thick mockery in his laughter. Fan Zhong and Wen Luan frowned. They wanted to speak a few times, but Nie Tian waved his hand to stop them. A group of frogs at the bottom of a well. Why bother explaining? So, Xianya really lost to you? Feng Kuan smiled cold. He obviously did not believe Nie Tian's words. If you don't believe me, you can try it yourself. Nye Tion's face was indifferent, but in Feng Kuen's eyes, it was extremely provocative. Provoking me? You're courting death. Feng Kuen's face instantly darkened as dense killing intent surged in his eyes. But at this moment, Feng Yaoxing stopped Feng Kuen and looked at Nye Tian. He said with a faint smile, "If Lord Beacon Emperor is interested, I can accompany you and bring you to the Wind Ghost martial arts field to have a look." Okay, how could Nye Tian not understand the meaning behind Feng Yaoxing's words? He smiled faintly and agreed. When Feng Kuen's face was gloomy, he did not understand why Feng Yaoxing did not let him fight. Feng Yaoxing naturally had his reasons for stopping Feng Kuen. On one hand, he felt that Feng Kuen was the #1 prodigy of the Wind Demons clan. A mere Heaven Tribulation King Sage was not worth Feng Kuen's time. On the other hand, Feng Yaoxing understood Feng Kuen's personality very well. Once he attacked, he would definitely not let it go. It would not be good if he injured Nye Tian. No matter what, Nye Tian was the master of Feng Tianming's sect. Even though Feng Tianming's sect had been weak in recent years, they still had their foundation. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It was better not to provoke them. The last reason was that Feng Yaoxing could see that Nye Tian was not stupid. With such a confident look, he must have something to rely on. First, letting others fight with Nye Tian to test his strength was also not a bad idea. If it was really impossible, then it would not be too late to let Feng Kuen fight. Nye, of course, Tian knew what Feng Yaoxing was planning, but he was not afraid at all. Since he came to visit the Wind Demons clan, if he did not show his strength, how would he have the right to speak? Peace after a while, Nye Tian and the others came to the Wind Demon martial field under Feng Yaoxing's lead. Although it was called the martial arts practice field, it was actually a vast valley surrounded by mountain cliffs that were tens of thousands of feet tall. It was indeed a place suitable for combat. At this time, there were dozens of cultivators fighting in the martial field. The scene was not very intense. It was just a normal exchange of pointers and pointers. Nye Tian glanced at them. These people were all very young and very strong. Most of them were Heaven Tribulation King sages. There were also a few Heaven Enlightenment Emperor sages. Lord Beacon Emperor, what do you think? Everyone stood on the high platform outside the martial field. Feng Yaoxing glanced at Nye Tian with a proud expression. Not bad. Nye Tian smiled faintly, not the slightest change in his expression. This dozens of people were so young and strong. It could indeed be seen how strong the Wind Demons clan was. He knew that even a genius like Wen Luan was only at the first Heaven Awakening stage. Knowing Nye Tian's opinion, the younger generation of the Wind Demons clan was only not bad, but not enough to impress him. In that case, Lord Beacon Emperor, do you want to? Feng Yaoxing frowned. Obviously, he was not satisfied with Nye Tian's answer. However, before he could finish, Nye Tian had already made his move. Nye Tian didn't move. He only waved his hand, and a powerful sword intent descended from the heavens, leaving a deep ravine that was hundreds of meters long in the middle of the martial arts practice field. The ravine's position was quite clever. It happened to divide the martial field into two halves. The dozens of Wind Demon cultivators were in one half of the martial field, while the other half was empty. Lord Beacon Emperor, what is the meaning of this? Feng Yaoxing's expression suddenly turned cold. Great Elder, don't you want to test my strength? The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. With a disdainful look in his eyes, he said with a plain tone, I'll just stand here and not move. If anyone in the martial arts field can cross that ravine, I'll admit defeat. Chapter 44:20. Standing on a high platform, Nye Tian looked like a sharp sword, sharp and unstoppable. His voice was calm, but every sentence was like a clap of thunder, resounding in Feng Yaoxing and Feng Kuen's ears, causing them to be stunned. Beacon Emperor, are you kidding me? After a while, Feng Yaoxing's tone changed. His eyes trembled as he suppressed his anger. Nye Tian was too arrogant. Even though Feng Yaoxing wanted to act like a gentleman, he couldn't do it anymore. First Sword Gully wanted to block the dozens of Wind Ghost cultivators in the drill ground. Furthermore, he even wanted to stand on the high platform without moving. This was simply too arrogant. No, even Feng Yaosheng, who was close to the peak of sky martial saint ancestor, couldn't do it. Humph! Feng Kuan sneered and mocked. So the Beacon King of the Feng Tian Fate School is just a sharp-tongued man with an undeserved reputation. Even Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others' expressions changed. They knew how strong Nye Tian was. They had seen it with their own eyes. However, what Nye Tian said was too shocking. They couldn't believe it. They knew that even Fan Zhong couldn't do what Nye Tian said. Only Tang 13 was calm and didn't panic. Since Nye Tian dared to say it, he could do it. First Elder, do I look like I'm joking? Nye Tian smiled. He looked at Feng Yaosheng confidently. Beacon Emperor, if that's the case, please let I see the world. Feng Yaosheng felt the confidence in Nye Tian's eyes. He said, but I have to remind the Beacon Emperor that if the Beacon Emperor can't do it, the Wind Demons clan will have to ask the Beacon Emperor to leave. Yaosheng thought, if you insist on making a fool of yourself, I won't stop you. But if the Beacon Emperor was someone who only knew how to talk big, then there was no need to talk to him. Of course. Nye Tian smiled faintly and nodded. Wind Yaosheng's face turned cold as he looked at Feng Kuan. Feng Kuan understood. His figure flashed, and he arrived at the drill ground to inform the Wind Ghost Cultivators. When the group of Wind Ghost Cultivators heard Feng Kuan's words, they immediately became angry and locked their gazes on Nye Tian. What an arrogant kid. You haven't reached the heaven and lightning realm yet, and you dare to talk big. You are courting death. It's just a gully. You want to stop me? Dream on. Isn't he just relying on his identity as the Beacon Emperor? If he wasn't the Beacon Emperor, I would be the first to kill him. With these words, he glared at Nye Tian, his eyes brimming with killing intent. Sir Beacon Emperor, they are ready. Feng Kuan returned to the high platform with a sinister smile. He was ready to watch a good show. Let's begin. Nye Tian, however, smiled calmly. His eyes were infuriatingly calm. Begin. Feng Kuan roared, his voice like thunder. Speak. The moment he finished speaking, the cultivators in the drill ground immediately moved. A first-layer heavenly perception, Saint Emperor, took the lead. His body was like an arrow that had just left the bow as he directly charged over, wanting to pass through the gully. But at this moment, Nye Tian's eyes darkened. With a thought, the sky sword was unsheathed. A shocking sword aura rose from the ground and shook the surrounding space. What a strong sword aura! Fan Zhong's face darkened, and he almost cried out. This was the second time he saw Nye Tian use his sword. The sword aura was much stronger than the last time. Previously, in the Hall of the Punishment Peak, Nye Tian had used his sword when he fought with Shun Yunhe. However, the sword aura was not as strong as it was now. It seems that the Beacon Emperor hid his strength in the Punishment Hall. Fan Zhong thought to himself in shock. Wen Luan was also stunned and could not react for a long time. On the other hand, Feng Yaosheng and Feng Kuan were utterly dumbfounded. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. Standing. Was the person in front of them really just a heavenly tribulation king sage? Boom! In the next moment, Nye Tian swung his sword, and an enormous amount of sword intent surged out. Like the Milky Way, it poured down and accurately landed on the gully in the martial arts practice field, forming a boundlessly powerful sword intent. 9 heavenly tribulation swords. Feng Yaosheng's eyes trembled. He scanned Nye Tian with his divine sense. The shock in his heart was clearly written on his face. He sensed that Nye Tian's sword principle cultivation was only at the 9 heavenly tribulation swords. But how was this possible? As an expert who was close to the peak, Feng Yaosheng had experienced countless battles in his life. Naturally, he had fought with strong sword principle cultivators, not to mention a heavenly tribulation swordsman. Even a sword consciousness-defying swordsman could not release such a terrifying wall of sword aura. Even among the sword martial saints, only a few people could have such a strong sword aura. But Nye Tian was only at the 9 heavenly tribulation swords. How could he have such a strong sword aura? The wall of sword intent descended like a raging wave, blocking the heavenly perception realm martial artist path. How could this be? The warrior wanted to get close to the wall of sword aura, but the pressure of the sword aura was like an invisible hand, making it difficult for him to move. Was this wall of sword aura really released by that guy? The others felt the same pressure. Their legs felt like they were filled with lead sand, and they could not move at all. Feng Yaoxing could not help but gasp when he saw this. The wind ghost warriors in the training field could not even get within 10 meters of the wall of sword aura, let alone pass through it. He must have cheated. He can't have such strong power. Feng Kuin's face was gloomy. The corners of his mouth twitched as he screamed in his heart. He could not believe that such a strong power really came from Nie Tian. Fan Zhong noticed Feng Kuin's abnormality and could not help but become nervous. He stared at Feng Kuin. "Everyone, let's attack together and destroy this wall of sword aura." At this moment, a wind ghost cultivator shouted. Then, his figure retreated rapidly. His aura surged as he sent out a palm strike. Since he could not pass through the wall of sword aura, he would destroy it. Boom! Boom! When the others saw this, they followed suit. Waves of wild power rushed out and crashed into the wall of sword aura. When Fan Zhong and when Luan saw this, they immediately became nervous. Their hearts were in their throats. These people would definitely attack without caring about anything. Could Nie Tian block them? But Nie Tian was not afraid at all. The power of the gods and demons in his body soared. At the same time, starlight shone around him. It was piercing to the eyes like the sun. Feng Yaoxing's expression changed drastically. At that moment, he truly felt the terror of Nie Tian's sword aura. Even the swordsmen and Saint Defire sword martial artists could not create such a terrifying presence. Bang, bang, bang. Waves of power fell and crashed into the wall of sword aura. They were absorbed like mud in the sea. The crowd of martial artists was shocked by the scene in front of them, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air, dumbfounded. Feng Yaoxing was also stunned by the scene, but he immediately understood something and cried out, "Oh no!" Boom! At that moment, the huge wall of sword aura shook and instantly gathered into a sky full of sword shadows. They exploded with an earth-shattering momentum and charged toward the dozens of warriors. Chapter 44:21. Dozens of wind ghost warriors on the martial arts practice field felt the enormous pressure. Their expressions changed instantly, and they were extremely frightened. Bang! 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 Then, a series of muffled sounds were heard. Figures flew out one after another, leaving bloody trails in the air. Feng Kuin and the others on the high platform were completely stunned. They looked at the people on the martial arts practice field in a daze. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Nie Tian was simply a monster. He was only at the 9th heaven tribulation realm, but he had such terrifying power. Dozens of wind ghost warriors were severely injured. Some were even lying on the ground, unable to get up. Great Elder Feng Yaoxing's lips trembled, and he couldn't say a word at all. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that things would turn out this way. "Great Elder, I won." Nie Tian smiled faintly. The sharpness in his eyes was terrifying. Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others were stunned for a long time before they finally reacted. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that a 9th heaven tribulation realm warrior could be so terrifying. Fan Zhong became even more determined. Following Nie Tian was the wisest decision he had made in his life. However, at this moment, a deep roar echoed out. It was Feng Kuin. "Nie Tian, how dare you injure a member of the Wind Ghoul tribe?" Feng Kuin's eyes were red. He was like a ferocious beast bathed in blood, and his killing intent was sharp. Nie Tian frowned and said coldly, "They're only injured. They will be fine." The people on the martial arts practice field were the best of the Wind Ghost tribe's younger generation. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the future of the Wind Ghost tribe. Because of this, Nie Tian had a sense of propriety when he attacked. He only injured them, but he didn't kill them. If he really released the power of the divine demon sword intent, these people would be crippled even if they didn't die. "Lord Beacon Emperor, thank you for your mercy." Feng Yaoxing finally calmed down and bowed slightly to Nie Tian to show his respect. How could he not see that Nie Tian still had some power left in him after his outburst? Otherwise, many of these wind ghost race cultivators would have died. Although Nie Tian injured them, Feng Yaoxing wanted to test Nie Tian's strength, so he couldn't say anything. Feng Yaoxing didn't expect the young Beacon Emperor to be so strong. He even had a feeling that even if he were to fight Nie Tian now, he might not necessarily be able to defeat him. Great Elder, he has injured so many of us. Are we just going to let him go like this? Feng Kuan did not let the matter rest as he furiously roared and asked. Nie Tian frowned, looked at Feng Kuan and asked, "Then what do you want?" Feng said. Feng Yaoxing said. Battle by Feng said. Are you sure? Nie Tian's eyes grew grim as he smiled viciously. Although Feng Kuan was known as the #1 genius of the Wind Ghost clan, he did not care about him at all. Feng is Feng of the ghost of Feng of the gods. Feng is Feng is a Feng. Feng Kuan is nothing to be afraid of. Yes, Feng Kuan's eyes were cold and murderous. Feng Kuan, you have seen the strength of the Beacon Emperor. We didn't come to the Wind Ghost Valley to establish our might, but to seek cooperation. When Luan frowned and said in a deep voice, "Shut up." Feng Kuan stared at Wen Luan and said, "Do you have the right to speak here?" "You." Wen Luan's face stiffened and his chest heaved. He and Feng Kuan were in the same generation, and his sister was engaged to Feng Kuan. However, Feng Kuan didn't care about him at all. How could he not be angry? Feng Kuan, the Beacon Emperor, didn't come here to provoke us. Let's forget about the battle, Feng Yaoxing said. He couldn't stand it anymore. Impossible. The look in Feng Kuan's eyes grew even more sinister. He stared at Nie Tian and said in a deep voice, "I have to fight." "Since that's the case, then as you wish." Nie Tian couldn't stand it anymore and said cold. He moved and came to the sky above the martial arts field. Feng Kuan was so arrogant. If he avoided the battle, he would be a coward. Good. Feng Kuan sneered and stood in the sky like lightning, facing Nie Tianling. This. Feng Yaoxing's face darkened, and he was speechless. Great Elder, don't worry. The Beacon Emperor knows his limits, Fan Zhong said with a smile. He knew what Feng Yaoxing was thinking. Nie Tian and the others were looking for an opportunity to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan. Therefore, no matter how angry Nie Tian was, he wouldn't kill Feng Kuan. He would teach him a lesson at most. Feng Yaoxing heard Fan Zhong's words, but his face didn't change for the better. Instead, it became gloomier. It was as if he was worried about something. Tang 13 could tell that Feng Yaoxing was worried about Nie Tian and thought, looks like this Feng Kuan is something. Since Feng Yaoxing had seen Nie Tian's strength, but he was still worried about Nie Tian, it meant that Feng Kuan was indeed a powerful cultivator. Could it be that Feng Kuan has mastered the 8 Ghost Wind Dance? Wenlin also noticed and was worried, but it was too late to say anything now. Hopefully, Nie Tian wouldn't underestimate Feng Kuan. Otherwise, something big would happen. Beacon Emperor, do you think that I am an arrogant idiot? In the sky, Feng Kuan looked at Nie Tian with cold eyes and an evil smile. You're not an idiot. You are just too arrogant. Nie Tian smiled. He didn't underestimate Feng Kuan. On the contrary, he thought that Feng Kuan must have something to rely on to provoke him. Therefore, in this battle, Nie Tian didn't plan to hold back. If necessary, he could even activate the demon god physique. Even though Feng Kuan's life was important compared to his own, Nie Tian obviously cared more about his own life. Is that so? Feng Kuan sneered and shouted. That's because I have a right to be arrogant. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Kuan took a step forward and a terrifying energy surged around him. Strange runes condensed and connected in the air. In the blink of an eye, a huge array formation was formed, covering an area of a few thousand meters. This is... When Luan felt the aura of the bloodline inside the array formation, and his eyes widened in shock. Night devouring boundary. Feng Yaoxing's expression changed as he stuttered. Could it be the blood sacrifice boundary of the 8 Ghost Wind Dance? When Luan's eyes shrunk as he thought of something. He had heard from Enho that the bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan was called the Night Devouring Snow Cicada. It was a special bloodline that originated from the ancient snow cicada. The Night Devouring Snow Cicada's power allowed the martial artists of the Wind Demon's clan to cultivate the 8-Ghost Wind Dance. In the 8-Ghost Wind Dance, there was a blood sacrifice boundary, which was the Night Devouring Boundary. The Night Devouring Boundary was terrifying. Once it was activated, it could increase a martial artist's ability by a few times. It could also suppress the opponent's power. However, the Night Devouring Boundary caused great damage to the bloodline. Hence, unless it was absolutely necessary, the Night Devouring Boundary would never be activated. Moreover, there was only one way to break the Night Devouring Boundary apart from the caster, and that was to kill the caster. No one expected Feng Kuan to activate the Night Devouring Boundary directly. Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Book House mobile version website. Com. Chapter 44:22. Feng Yaoxing stared at the Night Devourer realm in the sky with trembling eyes. Feng Kuan, why did you have to be so impulsive? Why did you have to force the Wind Demon's clan into a corner? Windy had watched Feng Kuan grow up, so he knew his temperament very well. Feng Kuan was known as the #1 genius of the Wind Demon's clan. He had enjoyed supreme glory since he was young and was the center of attention of the clan. He had developed an extremely arrogant temperament and thought highly of himself. Just the strength that Nie Tian had displayed just now must have greatly stimulated Feng Kuan. His jealousy had turned into hatred and killing intent. When Feng Kuan provoked Nie Tian by directly activating the Night Devourer realm, he was obviously prepared to die. This between him and Nie Tian, only one would survive this battle. However, regardless of the outcome of this battle, it was not what Feng Yaoxing wanted to see. Because no matter who died, the Feng Tian Fate sect and the Wind Demon's clan would be like fire and water. Although he had seen Nie Tian's strength, Feng Yaoxing felt that the winner of this battle was more likely to be Feng Kuan. Body as a member of the Wind Demon's clan, Feng Yaoxing was well aware of the terror of the Night Devourer realm. Slight, it was not an exaggeration to say that even he, Feng Yaoxing, would only have one outcome if he fell into Feng Kuan's Night Devourer realm, death. With Nie Tian's death, the Wind Demon's clan would have to face the wrath of the Feng Tian Fate sect. When Feng Yaoxing originally thought that the Wind Demon's clan and the Feng Tian Fate sect might have a chance to cooperate, but Feng Kuan's recklessness had completely destroyed this opportunity. That madman, Wenlin, also knew how terrifying the Night Devourer realm was. He roared in anger. Fan Zhong frowned, and his expression darkened. Although he didn't know how powerful the Night Devourer realm was, he could tell from Feng Yaoxing and Wenluan's expressions that Nie Tian was in danger. This spirit formation is indeed strange. Tang 13's expression also changed slightly, but she wasn't panicking. His ghost, I was naturally able to tell how dangerous the Night Devouring realm was. But he still had confidence in Nie Tian. He was a close friend of Nie Tian, and they had experienced countless life and death situations together. He knew very well how terrifying Nie Tian was. Namely, even if the Night Devourer realm was the blood sacrifice barrier of the Wind Demon's clan, it couldn't do anything to Nie Tian. Within the devouring night barrier, Nie Tianling stood alone, sharp as a sword. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong desire to fight. Nonetheless to say, he didn't expect Feng Kuan to have such a trick up his sleeve. However, this didn't scare him. Instead, it made him feel a surge of battle intent. Beacon Emperor, you are much calmer than I thought, Feng Kuan said coldly. Violent energy surged around him and rushed towards the sky. At this time, Nie Tian finally saw Feng Kuan's strength clearly. He was actually a 9th level heavenly perception Holy Emperor. With Feng Kuan's age, it was easy to imagine how talented he was to have such a cultivation level. No, there was an aura in Feng Kuan's body that made Nie Tian feel very uncomfortable. Although this aura came from his bloodline, it was incompatible with his body. It seemed to be struggling and wanting to rush out of his body. According to Wenlun, The bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan was originally getting weaker and weaker, so the clan became weaker and weaker. That was why they came to the 7th Cultivator's Sacred World and became a hidden family. However, in the recent thousands of years, the bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan suddenly became stronger, which is why a genius like Phong Kuan appeared. Nie Tian frowned. He suddenly remembered what Wen Luan had said before. He suddenly felt that the recovery of the bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan might not be simple. Go to hell. At this time, Phong Kuan roared and moved. He turned into a ray of light in the sky, and a snake-shaped sword appeared in his hand. He slashed down and attacked Nie Tian. Boom! The sky suddenly sank, and the world seemed to collapse. The terrifying sword intent condensed into a huge snake in the sky. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced over. Nie Tian immediately felt an overwhelming pressure, and he couldn't help but frown. He did not expect Phong Kuan to be a swordsman and have even reached the god-defying level of sword intent. Phong Kuan's strength was originally a realm higher than Nie Tian's. In addition, he had the advantage of the sword Dao, the increase in strength under the night devouring realm, and the boundary suppression on Nie Tian. This was easy to imagine how strong the pressure of this sword was. Wind Yaosheng's expression changed when he saw this through the boundary, such as this sword was powerful enough to kill some high-level heavenly martial divine ancestors in an instant. Boom! However, right at this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and the sword aura around his body surged up. The clear sky sword was like the scorching sun rising from the east, emitting a dazzling light. It actually blocked Phong Kuan's sword. Boom! A muffled sound was heard from the night-devouring realm. Nie Tian retreated for 100 meters before he could stabilize himself. On the other hand, Phong Kuan was as steady as a mountain and did not move at all. In the night-devouring realm, Nie Tian was still slightly weaker than Phong Kuan. But at this moment, there was no joy in Phong Kuan's eyes. Instead, there was shock and horror. He had never expected that his sword would be blocked by Nie Tian. Moreover, Nie Tian was only forced to retreat and was not injured. How is this possible? Namely, under the suppression of the night-devouring realm. How could Nie Tian still have such strong strength? His strength does not seem to be suppressed. Outside the boundary, Phong Yaosheng saw some clues, and his eyes trembled violently. He could not believe it. Although he was far away, he could still feel that the power of the night-devouring realm could not suppress Nie Tian at all. The night-devouring realm was the blood sacrifice boundary of the Wind Demon's clan. It had a strong suppression on most martial artists. Some of the weaker cultivators would not be able to bring out any of their strength in the night-devouring realm. But it was Nie Tian, yet he wasn't affected in the slightest. This was too strange. The night-devouring realm was activated by the night-devouring snow cicada. It was a suppression at the level of bloodline. Even the martial artists in the boundary who had the same level of bloodline as the night-devouring snow cicada would feel a strong suppression. No, there was only one reason for the suppression of the night-devouring realm. Nie Tian's bloodline power was far stronger than the night-devouring snow cicada's bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan. But the night-devouring snow cicada was already a top bloodline power. Otherwise, the Wind Demon's clan would not have been ranked among the aristocratic families. There were already very few bloodlines that were stronger than the night-devouring snow cicada, let alone bloodlines that far surpassed it. Yeah, heavens, this was too terrifying. There was another point that shocked Phong Yaosheng. He could tell that Nie Tian had been injured by the sword just now. However, the injury was not serious, and it healed in an instant. But under that level of collision, even a light injury would be extremely difficult to heal. And yet the fact that his heavens could heal in an instant showed the strength of his martial body and the terrifying recovery ability. Phong Yaosheng's eyes trembled as he realized that no matter how he looked at it, Nie Tian was a peerless genius. Is this the capital to be arrogant like you said? Nie Tian's cold gaze locked on a Phong Kuan from afar. It was extremely provocative. You're courting death. Phong Kuan was instantly enraged. He roared and waved the snake sword in his hand. His aura surged again. Chapter 44:23. Boom! In the Night Devourer's realm, Feng Kuen's chi surged again. How is this possible? Fan Zhong and Wen Luan were shocked. They couldn't understand why Feng Kuen would have such terrifying power, even in the Night Devourer's realm. Why are you doing this? Feng Yaoxing's face was filled with pain. He clenched his fists tightly and sweat covered them. How could he not know that Feng Kuen had to burn his bloodline power to increase his strength? Moreover, the burning of his bloodline power wasn't just a simple consumption. It would also cause great damage to his bloodline power. Also, in other words, the bloodline power that Feng Kuen burned might not be able to recover. He had sworn to kill Nie Tian at the cost of his own bloodline. This guy is crazy. Tang 13 saw through everything. She frowned and her face darkened. In fact, there was no grudge between Feng Kuen and Nie Tian. She didn't know where Feng Kuen's murderous intent came from. Lord Beacon Emperor, do you think I have the right to be arrogant now? Feng Kuen's body was enshrouded in a violent aura. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Nie Tian and said with a hideous expression. Nie Tian frowned, but he wasn't afraid at all. He smiled, just a little bit more. You. Being provoked once again, Feng Kuen was instantly enraged. With a wild roar, he slashed the 8-limbed night serpent's origin spirit sword across the sky. Instantly, the void trembled, and the power that was as vast as the sea completely burst out, rumbling and pressing towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian took a few steps back. He was shocked. He didn't expect Feng Kuen to be so powerful. He had to admit that he had underestimated Feng Kuen. No still didn't feel threatened. Next instantly, the celestial devil reverse mark appeared at the corner of Nie Tian's eyes. The moment he activated the celestial devil body, his chi aura changed. His sword aura surged like a dragon, soaring into the sky. Bang! The two chi auras collided in the air. The earth shook as if it was going to collapse. 8 winds ghost dance, cold cicada cries blood. Right at this moment, Feng Kuen's gaze was extremely ruthless, and his face was distorted as if Nie Tian was the enemy that annihilated his family. Just like that, the atmosphere in the night-devouring realm changed as soon as he finished speaking. Cold, austere, silent, and abyss-like. Very even the world outside the barrier was covered in a layer of killing intent. In the void, one could clearly see the fluttering frost and snow. Night-devouring snow cicada. Wen Luan's eyes were trembling, and so was his voice. He knew that this was the bloodline power of the Wind Demon's clan, the night-devouring snow cicada. Under Feng Kuen's extreme stimulation, it had actually leaked out of the barrier. Feng Yaoxing's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was extremely gloomy. Wen Kuen had activated the night-devouring world and used the 6th form of the ghost dance of 8 Wind's 6th form, the cold cicada weeping blood, which is a huge burden on his bloodline power. Under such circumstances, even if Feng Kuen won, he would suffer a bloodline injury. Moreover, it would be a bloodline injury that could not be healed. He had never thought that Feng Kuen would end up like this. If he had known earlier, he would have stopped Feng Kuen and not allowed the battle to begin. In the night-devouring realm, Nie Tian felt the sudden change in the void's atmosphere, and his face darkened. Die! In the chaotic void, Feng Kuen's roar resounded with hysterical madness. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Nie Tian frowned, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Immediately afterwards, Nie Tian took a step forward, wreathed in dazzling starlight that made him look like a blazing sun. Starry sky, universe reversal, how the heavenly sword swept across the void like a white rainbow. The godly demon sword essence merged with the power of the stars, and an unprecedented aura and power erupted. Bang! In the next instant, a low rumble was heard, and the night-devouring realm shook. The space seemed to be pulled by a huge force, and it let out a low wail, as if it was about to be torn apart. Then, the crowd outside the spirit formation saw an exceptionally terrifying scene. Devour, a white crack appeared on the surface of the night devouring realm. How is this possible? Feng Yaoxing's expression changed as he realized something. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. He could not believe his eyes. The night-devouring realm was about to break. Bang! 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 Then, a series of muffled noises were heard, and white cracks appeared on the night-devouring realm in the shape of a spider web. Blink in the blink of an eye, the seemingly unbreakable night-devouring realm was on the verge of collapsing. Fan Zhong, Wen Luan, and the others were so excited that tears were about to fall from their eyes. Only Tang 13 remained calm, and her brows were tightly knitted together. Even under such circumstances, Tang 13 could clearly see what was going on inside the spirit domain. Rumble. Right at this moment, a terrifying rumble sounded out from the void. The night-devouring realm was collapsing. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, an endless amount of energy spread wildly, and it was as if the sky and earth were about to be engulfed. So after a long time, the waves slowly receded, and two figures appeared. It was Nie Tian and Feng Kuan. However, Feng Kuan had already fainted and was lying flat in the air. Nie Tian was beside him, and his face was pale. Fan Zhong and the others stared at the two of them, not knowing what had happened. If I didn't kill him, the Wind Demons clan might not be grateful. Tang 13 smiled bitterly and sighed in her heart. He saw very clearly that Nie Tian broke Feng Kuan's night-devouring realm with one strike. Originally, Feng Kuan and his realm should have disappeared. However, at the last moment, Nie Tian's heart softened, and he used the power of his 10th vital meridian to save Feng Kuan's life. Fortunately, Nie Tian had the 10th vital meridian. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to save Feng Kuan even if he wanted to. However, although Feng Kuan survived, his bloodline was severely damaged. It was almost impossible for him to recover to his previous level. At this moment, Nie Tian moved and brought Feng Kuan to Feng Yaoxing's side. He said calmly, "First Elder, I will save his life." Yaoxing's eyes trembled as two lines of tears flowed down. He took Feng Kuan from Nie Tian's hands while trembling. This result was something Feng Yaoxing never expected. Open Feng Kuan, who activated the night-devouring realm, actually lost to Nie Tian. How could Nie Tian, who was only at the 9th level of Heaven Tribulation, be so strong? What Feng Yaoxing didn't expect was that not only did Nie Tian break the night-devouring realm, but he also saved Feng Kuan's life. Wind Yaoxing knew very well that Nie Tian saved Feng Kuan's life because he didn't want the Wind Demons clan and Feng Tian Fate sect to go to extremes. However, could this really avoid extremes? Feng Kuan survived, but his bloodline talent was gone. Was Feng Kuan still valuable to the Wind Demons clan? At this moment, an important decision was placed in front of Feng Yaoxing. Should he kill Nie Tian or not? Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Book House's mobile version. Com. Chapter 44-24. Feng Yaoxing's eyes trembled, and his heart was in turmoil. Feng Kuan was defeated. Although his life was saved, his bloodline talent was severely damaged and could not be recovered. To the Wind Demons clan, Feng Kuan's greatest value was his powerful talent and potential. But now this potential was gone. So is that so? Does the Wind Ghost clan still want to work with the Feng Tian Fate sect? Originally, the Wind Demons clan and Gia sect were close. Nie Tian visiting Feng Tian Ming sect on behalf of Feng Tian Ming sect was obviously interfering. Although Feng Kuan's accident was caused by his provocation, the result was still caused. So if this matter was known to the other upper echelons of the Wind Demons clan, it would definitely cause an uproar. Feng Yaoxing guessed that the Wind Demons clan would most likely declare war on Feng Tianming sect. If that was the case, he would have to kill Nie Tian directly. Not to mention Nie Tian's identity, just his strength and talent alone could not be left alive. Grand Elder, you're considering if you want to kill me, right? Nie Tian saw Feng Yaoxing's reaction and obviously knew what the latter was thinking. He smiled and said directly, Fanzhong was already very nervous. Hearing Nie Tian's words, he immediately tensed up. Everyone's expression changed, and their eyes focused on Feng Yaoxing. Although everyone sensed that Feng Yaoxing's emotions were strange, they did not expect Nie Tian to say it so directly. Sir Beacon Emperor, although you saved Feng Kuen's life, you can't restore his talent. Feng Kuen, without talent, is worthless to the Wind Demon's clan. Feng Yaoxing looked straight at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression. You killed the #1 genius of the Wind Demon's clan, which is equivalent to killing the future of the Wind Demon's clan. Do you think I should let you leave alive? In the end, Feng Yaoxing's eyes surged with unconcealable killing intent. Wind Kuen was extremely talented and had long been recognized as the next leader of the Wind Demon's clan. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the future of the Wind Demon's clan. Nie Tian frowned and said, "Does Grand Elder really think that Feng Kuen is the future of the Wind Demon's clan? Feng Kuen's talent is indeed very high, but as for his temperament, I believe that First Elder should be very clear about it." Originally, the Great Elder did not agree to this battle, but Feng Kuen insisted on provoking him. He hasn't even taken control yet, and he's already like this. When he truly takes control of the Wind Demon's clan, won't he be able to cover the sky with one hand and dictate everything? With his character, can he really bring a bright future to the Wind Demon's clan? Tian questioned coldly, causing Feng Yaoxing's eyes to tremble. He immediately fell into deep thought. Yes, indeed, the higher-ups of the Wind Demon's clan had been worried about Nie Tian. Just like when Feng Kuen killed many disciples of the Gia sect in Gia sect, which almost caused the Gia sect to be furious. In the end, the Wind Demon's clan sent Feng Li and the others to Gia sect and agreed to some conditions of the Gia sect. Only then did the matter settle down. However, the higher-ups of the Wind Demon's clan felt that Feng Kuen was just too young. After some experience and training, he would definitely mature and steady. But unfortunately, the truth was not so. As Feng Kuen's strength continued to increase, his arrogance also became more and more severe. Until now, other than the clan leader and the Great Elder who could slightly restrain Feng Kuen had completely disregarded everyone else. Just like that just now. Even though Feng Yaoxing objected to Feng Kuen challenging Nie Tian, he still did it. Moreover, he did it without any hesitation. One thinking about this, Feng Yaoxing's heart ached. Why couldn't he have stopped Feng Kuen? But now, things had already happened, and it was too late to say anything. Great Elder, rather than saying that this Empress erased the future of the Wind Demon's clan, it would be better to say that this Empress pointed out a better future for the Wind Demon's clan. Nie Tian saw that Feng Yaoxing was silent for a long time and knew that he was hesitating. What do you mean? Feng Yaoxing raised his eyebrows in confusion. Great Elder, I heard that the Wind Demon's clan has been in contact with the Gia sect for a long time, but they have never established a deeper alliance with the Gia sect. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "This Empress is guessing that you are also hesitating and doubting whether the Gia sect is the best partner." So what? Feng Yaoxing's face was gloomy and cold. Indeed, although the Wind Demon's clan had been in contact with the Gia sect, it was far from the point of forming an alliance. The Gia sect had risen rapidly in recent years, and its limelight had overshadowed the Feng Tian sect. It was indeed a very attractive partner to form an alliance with. But the Gia sect didn't want to form an alliance with the Wind Demon's clan. Instead, they wanted the Wind Demon's clan to attach to the Gia sect and become its vassal. If it was an ordinary family force, they would definitely agree. But the Wind Demon's clan was different. After all, they were an aristocratic family with a deep foundation. Even if they had declined, they still had their own dignity. How could they be the vassal of others at will? It was precisely because of this that the Wind Demon's clan maintained a certain distance from the Gia sect. Wind Yaosheng didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to see so much from the surface at such a young age. Fanzhong was also stunned. He admired Nie Tian from the bottom of his heart. Of previously, even he didn't think about it in this direction. He had always thought that the Wind Demon's clan and the Gia sect had a close relationship. He even felt that this trip to the Wind Demon's clan was unnecessary. But he didn't expect Nietian to be able to see the deeper truth. Fan, after thinking about it again, he roughly understood in his heart. Back when he cooperated with the Gia sect, the Gia sect's condition was that the Feng Tian sect submit to the Gia sect. Come to think of it, the conditions that the Gia sect and the Wind Demon's clan had made were similar. It was just that the Wind Demon's clan had their own strength of character and didn't agree to the Gia sect. This thinking about it, everything was much more clear. The Wind Demon's clan didn't form an alliance with the Gia sect. There must be something else. Nietian smiled faintly. He didn't say it, but said, I represent the Feng Tian sect and am willing to form an alliance with the Wind Demon's clan. Both parties are of equal status, mutually beneficial, and share weal and woe. How about it? Feng Yaosheng was stunned at first. Then he sneered. Lord Beacon Emperor, aren't your words a little too arrogant? Although I don't understand the Feng Tian sect, I have heard a little about your strength. The Feng Tian sect was indeed powerful a long time ago. But now, I'm afraid it's no longer comparable to the past, right? You're right, First Elder. Nietian nodded with a smile. But First Elders should know that a centipede dies but doesn't fall down, and a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. No matter how weak the Feng Tian sect is, it's still a big sect. Is that so? Feng Yaosheng sneered again and couldn't help but glance at Wenlun. But I heard that a few days ago, the Gia sect came to provoke them. Even Wenlun, the head disciple of the Feng Tian sect, lost miserably. If it wasn't for the Beacon Emperor, the Feng Tian sect would have lost completely. Wenlun's eyes narrowed, and his expression was a little embarrassed. As the head disciple of the Feng Tian sect, it was indeed a little unreasonable that he couldn't even beat a martial artist ranked below the top 10 in the Gia sect. Feng Yaosheng's words were very clear. No matter how strong Nietian was, he was only one person. On the other hand, the Gia sect had countless talented disciples. Was this a disadvantage that he could make up for alone? Situation, moreover, Nietian hadn't truly grown up yet. Chapter 44:25. Feng Yaosheng's face was filled with disdain as the coldness in his eyes intensified. Fan Zhong could not help but become nervous as his aura locked onto Feng Yaosheng. If they were to fight, he must strike first before Feng Yaosheng could make a move. As the great elder of the Wind Demon's clan, Feng Yaosheng's strength should be above Fan Zhong's. However, Nietian's expression was calm as he looked at Feng Yaosheng calmly. I alone can defeat the entire Ghost Cliff sect. Defeat your entire sect alone. As Nietian said this, a faint aura rose from his body as if it could defy the heavens. Feng Yaosheng looked at the silver-haired young man and could sense the domineering confidence in the latter's eyes. His heart could not help but tremble. Even though he had experienced countless things in his life and heard countless heroic words, he was still amazed by the young martial artist before him. One person defeating an entire sect. What kind of aura was that? Fan Zhong, Wenlun, and the rest were stunned as well. They did not expect Nietian to say such shocking words. Subsequently, Feng Yaosheng fell into silence. After a long time, the coldness in Feng Yaosheng's eyes dissipated and he said in a hoarse voice, Sir Beacon Emperor, this is a matter of great importance. I will need to discuss with the clan leader and the Elder Council. He had to admit that he was stunned by Nietian's aura. With such an outstanding Beacon Emperor, there was no need for the Feng Tian Fate sect to worry about not being able to prosper. Another thing was that Feng Yaosheng could not be sure. If they really fell out, would he be able to kill Nietian? Of course. Nietian smiled faintly and agreed readily. Feng Yaosheng's identity was respected, but the alliance was related to the future of the Wind Demon's clan. Of course, he could not decide on his own. Since that's the case, we will take our leave first. We will visit again in the future. Seeing this, Fan Zhong took a step forward and hurriedly bid his farewell. He was worried that if he followed Feng Yaosheng to meet the higher-ups of the Wind Demon's clan, it would be troublesome if the Wind Demon's clan fell out with him. If it was just Feng Yaosheng alone, he might be able to handle it, but if there were a few more Wind Ghost Elders, he would have no chance of winning. Feng Yaoxing was intelligent and naturally understood the meaning behind Fan Zhong's words. However, he could not stop him and could only force a smile and nod his head. The alliance between the two sides is a big deal, and it's also a good thing. Naturally, it will only get better. But at that moment, Nie Tian smiled and said, "Since I'm already here, there's no harm in taking this opportunity to meet the Wind Demon's higher-ups. Sir Beacon Emperor, there are still some matters in the sect that you need to attend to. Moreover, the alliance is not urgent, so we should take our leave first." Fan Zhong's expression changed as he said hurriedly. Nie Tian was not stupid. He could tell that Fan Zhong was worried, so he smiled and said, "Flag Leader Fan, you're worrying too much." This. Fan Zhong's expression darkened, and he could not say a word. Since Nie Tian had said so, what else could he say? Sir Beacon Emperor is indeed extraordinary. Please follow me. Feng Yaoxing could not help but smile. His impression of Nie Tian immediately improved, so he stood up and led the way. Feng Yaoxing handed Feng Kuan over to the others, then brought Nie Tian and the others to the Wind Demon's clan's meeting hall. The Wind Demon's clan lived in the mountains. Unlike ordinary families, it was more like a sect. Even a meeting hall was in a valley. The valley was very simple, and there were only some stone benches. In a corner of the valley, there was a stone drum with a unique shape. After entering the valley, Feng Yaoxing gestured for everyone to take a seat. Then, he came before the stone drum and sounded it to summon people. Moments later, elders in green entered the valley one after another. They were the elders of the Wind Demon's clan. Feng Yaoxing introduced them one by one and let the elders take a seat. Nie Tian observed secretly. The Wind Demon's clan's elders were similar to the One clan's elders. There were about 10 of them, but their auras were thicker, and it was obvious that they were stronger. "How's the clan leader?" Seeing that most of the elders had arrived, Feng Yaoxing looked at a slightly shorter elder with a goatee and asked, "Since the Wind Demon drum has sounded, the clan leader should be here soon." The elder with the goatee nodded slightly and looked at Nie Tian strangely. Nie Tian frowned. He felt that the atmosphere was not right. "Lord Beacon Emperor, could the people from the Wind Demon's clan be plotting something?" Fan Zhong also sensed it and asked secretly through voice transmission. "It's fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and gestured for Fan Zhong to calm down. After a while, a tall and skinny middle-aged man appeared and walked into the valley with a majestic gait. When Feng Yaoxing and the elders saw this person, they stood up and bowed respectfully. "Looks like he's the clan leader of the Wind Demon's clan." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he stood up as well. He secretly sized up the tall and skinny man. This man looked to be about the same age as the clan leader of the One clan, Wen Xiang. However, his aura was extremely thick, even stronger than that of the One clan's grand elder, Wen Xingmu. At this moment, Nie Tian had already realized that the Wind Ghouls were much more powerful than the One clan, judging from the clan master and the elders' reactions. The middle-aged man was the clan leader of the Wind Demon's clan, Wind Demon. Wind Demon's original name was Feng Lingyun. After becoming the clan leader, he took on a unique name of the Wind Demon's clan. There was a tradition in the Wind Demon's clan. Once the clan leader became the clan leader, the word ghost would be added after the word Feng. For example, if Feng Kuan became the clan leader, his name would be Feng Gue Kuan. Wind Demon sat on the main seat and gestured for everyone to take their seats. Then, he locked his eagle-like eyes on Nie Tian. "Clan leader, this is the Beacon Emperor of the Sky Beacon sect, Nie Tian." Feng Yaoxing quickly introduced with a smile. "Sky Beacon Beacon Emperor, you're indeed a young talent." Wind Demon smiled faintly. His voice was hearty, but his eyes were deep. Nie Tian nodded and smiled without saying anything. "Great elder." Then, Wind Demon looked at Feng Yaoxing. The latter must have something important to say, since he struck the Wind Demon drum. Feng Yaoxing nodded and told him what happened just now. He also explained Nie Tian's intention to form an alliance. However, as soon as he finished speaking, there was an uproar on the spot. This Beacon Emperor is too insolent. He actually injured Feng Kuan's bloodline. Yeah, Feng Kuan's bloodline was injured. Isn't this the same as crippling him? In the Wind Demon Valley, he injured the younger brother of the Wind Demon clan and severely injured Fengkuan. Now, he wants to form an alliance with us. This Beacon Emperor is really scheming. Everyone's eyes were focused on Nie Tian. They didn't care about the cause of the matter at all. They all criticized him, and some even had killing intent on their faces. Nie Tian frowned. Although he had expected such a situation, he didn't expect the elders to react so fiercely. Feng Yaoxing looked very embarrassed. Although he knew what had happened, he couldn't explain that it was Fengkuan's fault. Furthermore, given the current situation, even if he were to truly explain himself, these elders might not believe him. After a long time, the valley quieted down. Everyone looked at Wind Demon at the same time. Because Wind Demon wasn't only the clan leader of the Wind Demon clan, but he also had another identity, Fengkuan's father. Please remember this book's domain name. Biaoshu. Com mobile version website. M. Chapter 4426. The patriarch of the Wind Demon's clan, Wind Demon, was Fengkuan's father. Feng Yaoxing's expression was very ugly and his eyes were trembling. It was obvious that he was very nervous. Fengkuan was heavily injured by Nie Tian and almost lost his bloodline, but he still brought Nie Tian here. This was undoubtedly to tell Wind Demon that he agreed to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan and Heaven Beacon sect. Wind Ghost Ling Yun's face was gloomy like a lion, releasing a terrifying aura. At this moment, no one could feel the rage that Wind Demon was suppressing in his heart. Lord Beacon Emperor. After a moment of silence, Wind Demon stood up and locked his frighteningly dark eyes on Nie Tian. You're here to form an alliance with the Wind Demon's clan, right? Nie Tian nodded and also stood up. Wind Demon clan leader, this emperor did not come to the Wind Demon's clan to provoke you. Fengkuan's matter was just an accident. He activated the night devouring boundary during the battle. This emperor tried his best, but could only barely save his life. Nie Tian was not a coward, but there were some things that had to be made clear. Wind Demon's eyes trembled, and his expression became even darker, as if he was thinking about something. He did not expect Fengkuan to use the night devouring boundary. Feng Yaoxing did not mention this earlier. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than a father. Wind Demon knew Fengkuan's personality very well. Although Feng Yaoxing did not explain in detail, he could roughly guess what happened. However, he was still surprised that Fengkuan used the night devouring boundary. Since this was the case, it was enough to prove that Fengkuan was determined to kill Nie Tian at that time. The fact that Nie Tian had spared his life, even though he had defeated him, was already very benevolent. However, no matter how wrong Fengkuan was, he was still Wind Demon's son. Could it be that he, the clan leader, was really going to form an alliance with the enemy who had injured his son? At that moment, the expressions of the Wind Demon's clan's elders changed. Fengkuan activated the night-devouring world, but he was still defeated by this kid. How is this possible? Fengkuan in the night-devourer realm can fight against high-level sky martial divine ancestors. How could he lose to a heaven tribulation divine king? With the night-devouring realm broken, there's no way Fengkuan could have survived. Everyone discussed animatedly, looking at Nie Tian with a suspicious gaze. Nie Tian's face was calm as he said in a loud voice, "If elders don't believe me, you can ask Great Elder." Moreover, when this empress fought Fengkuan, there were dozens of young warriors of the Wind Demon's clan as witnesses. Everyone's expression changed, and they immediately turned to look at Feng Yaoxing. Feng Yaoxing's expression became even uglier, but he still nodded with difficulty. Then, the valley fell into dead silence again. Beacon King, do you know that Fengkuan is my son and the next chief of the Wind Ghost tribe? After a while, Wind Ghost Ling Yin calmed down a lot and asked in a deep voice. Fengkuan provoked me first, so I had no choice but to accept the challenge. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he said, his identity will not affect the result of the battle. The calm answer made the atmosphere tense again. Very well, I admire Master Beacon Emperor's courage. Unexpectedly, Wind Demon suddenly laughed and said, however, We need better proof to see if the Heaven Beacon sect is worth the alliance. Nietion's brow furrowed as his expression flickered. Ow! Wind Demon's eyes were slightly evil, and he said loudly, Sect leader Yin, please enter the valley. Nietion's expression involuntarily changed. He didn't know what Wind Ghostling Yin was up to. Just as Feng Gue Ling Yun finished speaking, a green-robed old man stepped into the valley. Behind him were a few stern-looking old men and a few young warriors. People from the Gias sect. Nietion did not know the elder in green walking at the front, but he recognized the other two elders. They were the ones who provoked the Gias sect at the Heaven Beacon sect. At that time, although these two did not attack, they were the ones who led the Gias sect to provoke the Heaven Beacon sect. He did not expect to meet these two here. It was obvious that these people were from the Gias sect, and the elder in green was undoubtedly of a higher status. Nietion secretly sensed the elder's aura, and it was not below Wind Demon's. The cyan-robed old man didn't look at Nietion. Instead, he smiled at Wind Ghostling Yin and asked, Have you made up your mind, Wind Ghost High Chieftain? His name was Yin Qing, the deputy sect leader of the Gias sect. He came to the Wind Demon Valley to recruit the Wind Demon's clan. Nietion's expression changed, and he immediately understood. It seemed that the Wind Demon did not come out to receive him not because he was busy, but because he went to receive Yin Qing. The clan leader received the Gias sect, and the great elder received the Heaven Beacon sect. The arrangement was very reasonable. If it was not because of Feng Kun, Nietion and Yin Qing would not even know of each other's existence. Wind Demon nodded at Yin Qing, then looked at Nietion and said cold, Sect leader Yin, Sir Beacon Emperor, since both of you want to cooperate with the Wind Demon's clan, I will give you a chance to compete equally. Whoever wins, the Wind Demon's clan will cooperate with them. So this is Sir Beacon Emperor of the Heaven Beacon sect. No wonder you could defeat the disciples of the Gias sect so easily. Yin Qing looked at Nietion and said in a strange tone. What he meant was obvious. You are the sect leader, so it is not surprising that you can defeat the disciples of the Gias sect. Nietion glanced at Yin Qing and ignored him. He asked Wind Demon, May I ask, Wind Demon clan leader, how do you want us to compete? Wind Demon looked at the people of the Gias sect, then the people of the Heaven Beacon sect. He smirked and said in a deep voice, It's very simple. Each side will send out 3 people. 3 battles, 2 wins out of 3. The winner will be the ally of the Wind Demon's clan. Wind Ghost clan leader, the Ghost Cliff sect doesn't just want an ally. Yin Qing said with a dark look in his eyes as soon as Wind Ghostling Yin finished speaking. As long as sect leader Yin wins, I will agree to the conditions of the Gias sect. Wind Demon said in a heavy tone. That's good. Yin Qing smiled and looked at Nietion with a disdainful and provocative look. He said in a cold voice, Sir Beacon Emperor, the Wind Demon clan leader has spoken. Do you dare to accept? Dare to accept? This was a blatant provocation. Sir Beacon Emperor. Before Nietion could speak, Fan Zhong stood up and shouted. He waved his hand to signal Nietion not to be impulsive. A battle like this was not fair at all. The Gias sect had many powerful cultivators, while the Heaven Beacon sect only had Fan Zhong. Furthermore, the Wind Demon suggestion was obviously to get someone else to do his dirty work. Using the Gias sect's knife to avenge Feng Kuin's crippled cultivation. Chapter 44:27. In the valley, everyone's eyes were focused on Nietion, waiting for his answer. Wind Demon was indeed using a borrowed knife to kill, but at the same time, he was also giving the Fengtian Fate sect a chance, albeit a slim one. I accept this battle. Nietion did not hesitate for too long. He slowly raised his head and said indifferently. As his words fell, everyone felt as if they were struck by lightning. They were dumbfounded and could not react for a long time. In everyone's eyes, Nietion's decision was very unwise. On the Gias sect side, other than Yin Qing, there were 3 other elders from the Gias sect. Although they were not as strong as Yin Qing, they were definitely powerful. As for the Fengtian Fate sect, only Fan Zhong had the strength to fight. The others were too weak. Even if Nie Tian defeated Feng Kuan, he was still too weak in front of Yin Qing and the others. If the Feng Tian Fate sect master and the others were here, there might be a chance. But now there was no chance at all. After a moment of silence, Feng Yaoxing spoke, giving Nie Tian a chance to back out. Lord Beacon Emperor, have you really thought it through? Was there really a need for such a hopeless battle? Feng Yaoxing knew of Nie Tian's potential. He did not want to see such a genius fall just like this. Yes, I have, Nie Tian said with a smile, his face expressionless. Good. Wind Demon shouted. Lord Beacon Emperor is young, but your courage is unparalleled. I admire you. Nie Tian glanced at Wind Ghostling Yun, a disdainful smile hanging at the corner of his mouth. How could he not see that Wind Demon was using a borrowed knife to kill? But he had to accept the challenge. If he did not accept the challenge, the Feng Tian Fate sect and the Wind Demon's clan would definitely become mortal enemies. How could Wind Demon, Yin Qing, and the others let Nie Tian leave so easily? Nie Tian accepted the challenge, but his opponents were only 3 from the Gia sect. If he didn't accept the challenge, his opponents would be the Gia sect and the Wind Demon's clan. Nie Tian naturally weighed the pros and cons of this matter very clearly. In his opinion, if he accepted the challenge, he would at least have a sliver of a chance. Very well. Beacon Emperor, you are courageous. How can I not accompany you with my life? Yin Qing laughed out loud, extremely arrogant. What he meant was that he was one of the 3 representatives from Gia's sect. In fact, Yin Qing also saw through Wind Demon's intentions, but he didn't expect that Nie Tian would actually dare to accept the challenge. With such a powerful Beacon Emperor in the Feng Tian Fate sect, they must not be allowed to live. Everyone, please follow me. Wind Ghostling Yun's figure flashed, and he led the way in front. Since it was a battle between 2 sects, they naturally had to find a suitable battlefield. Moments later, everyone arrived above a vast valley. Faction leader Yin, Beacon Emperor, how about you 2 fight here? Wind Demon pointed at the valley below and smiled. His eyes glanced at Nie Tian as if he was choosing a grave for Nie Tian. That's right. Yin Qing stepped out and landed. Nie Tian didn't say anything. He only nodded and landed as well. Everyone landed one after another. They all had different expressions, but their eyes were filled with a strange light. They were obviously looking forward to the upcoming battle. Sir Beacon Emperor, we have chosen our side. I, 3rd Elder, and 4th Elder will fight. What about you guys? Yin Qing sneered at Nie Tian as soon as he steadied himself, provoking him. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he made up his mind. The 3 from the Gia sect were the strongest on their side. On the Feng Tian Fate sect side, other than Fan Zhong, everyone else was young and had very few people. They didn't have much choice. The Wind Demon's clan looked at Yin Qing with a strange expression. Though they didn't like Nie Tian, Yin Qing was too shameless. He didn't give the Feng Tian Fate sect any chance. This was normal. After all, this wasn't a simple battle. It was a battle that determined who the Wind Demon's clan belonged to. Sir Beacon Emperor, you still haven't made up your mind? Seeing that Nie Tian didn't speak, Yin Qing spoke again. The sneer on his face was even more disdainful. Nie Tian ignored Yin Qing. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind. He decided to let Fan Zhong, Tang 13, and himself fight. Wen Luan's capabilities weren't high to begin with. Though his life meridian was repaired, he was still too weak. Overall, Tang 13 was stronger. However, Nie Tian was worried that Tang 13 had the seed of the underworld inside her. If it activated during the battle, it would be troublesome. Just as Nie Tian was about to open his mouth, he suddenly sensed an extremely familiar aura, causing his expression to change. Since it's a battle between the Feng Tian sect and the Gia sect, how about I join? Then a familiar voice arose. A silhouette descended like a ghost and appeared in front of everyone. Everyone stared at the silhouette and their expressions changed. They didn't know who it was. It's you. Nie Tian stared at the person before him, and his expression turned cold. He uttered the person's name, Devil's Knight. That's right. The person who suddenly appeared was none other than Devil's Knight. Devil's Knight, was a demon born from Nietion's body. Nietion didn't expect Devil's Knight to appear at this moment. "Who are you?" When Demon noticed that Devil's Knight and Nietion's faces were very similar. The only difference was that Devil's Knight gave off a darker vibe. When Demon frowned and asked, "Fontion sect, Devil's Knight." Devil's Knight smiled faintly and introduced himself. "Fontion sect." Everyone's expression darkened as they looked at Devil's Knight strangely. Fontion sect was the name of the Fontion sect a long time ago. Later on, the Fontion sect declined and its disciples practiced life techniques. Hence, it became the Fontion sect. It was strange that Devil's Knight said he was from the Fontion sect. To be exact, it's the Fontion soul sect. Devil's Knight saw everyone's confusion and smiled again. Fontion soul sect. Everyone was stunned again. There had always been the Fontion sect and the Fontion fate sect. Since when did the Fontion soul sect appear? Soul sect. Only Fan Zhong's expression changed as if he thought of something. "Looks like you know about the Fontion soul sect." Devil's Knight looked at Fan Zhong with an evil smile. Nietion, Wenluan, and the others also looked at Fan Zhong. The latter clearly knew something. "Yes." Fan Zhong was silent for a moment before he finally nodded and said, "Rumor has it that when the Fontion sect declined, it split into two, the Fontion fate sect and the Fontion soul sect. The Fontion fate sect cultivates fate techniques while the Fontion soul sect cultivates soul techniques. However, the Fontion soul sect only existed for a short period of time before completely disappearing. Therefore, people think that the Fontion fate sect is the original Fontion sect." At this point, Fan Zhong suddenly thought of something. He looked up at Devil's Knight and asked, "What is your identity in the Fontion soul sect?" The corner of Devil's Knight's mouth twitched. He smiled and softly said two words, "Beacon Emperor." Chapter 44:28. Choking with sobs. Novel Beacon Emperor. When Devil's Knight said this name, everyone's expression changed. They stared at Devil's Knight in disbelief. Fan Zhong's expression was a little stunned. Although he had vaguely guessed Mo Ye's identity, he was still shocked when Mo Ye revealed his identity. Again, a Beacon Emperor. The Beacon Emperor of Feng Tianhun sect. Nietion and Devil's Knight. Feng Tianhun sect and Feng Tianhun sect, two Beacon Emperors. Nietion looked at Devil's Knight. His eyes calmed down and a bitter smile hung on his face. Demon, the relationship between him and Knight was similar to the relationship between Hayakuten and Dongwang Jingrong. Only yes, Dongwang Jingrong was dead, but Hayakuten was still alive. Would history repeat itself on Nietion and Devil's Knight? Nietion already knew that there would be a fateful battle between him and Devil's Knight. However, he did not expect to meet Devil's Knight at this moment. Moreover, Devil's identity was surprisingly similar to his. Perhaps fate really existed in the unseen world. Nietion, who is this guy? Tang 13 stared at Devil's Knight for a long time. He felt a familiar aura from Devil's Knight. He was in disbelief and asked Devil's Knight telepathically. Demon Knight's appearance was similar to Nietion's. His aura was similar to Nietion's. Even his strength was shockingly similar. Their relationship was not ordinary. At first, Tang 13 thought that Devil's Knight was Nietion's twin brother. However, after thinking about it, Nietion did not have any brothers. "He is my dark side, my inner demon." Nietion's eyes darkened and said telepathically, "Inner demon?" Tang 13's expression changed, but he did not ask any further. He could tell that the relationship between Nietion and Devil's Knight was more complicated than he thought. "Nietion, before I came to the sacred world of 7 cultivators, I already knew that the Fire Beacon Heaven Fate sect had found a new Beacon Emperor. I just didn't expect that this Beacon Emperor would be you." The corners of Devil's Knight's mouth twitched into an evil arc. He looked at Nietion and said, "It seems that we can't hide from each other." The corners of Heaven's mouth twitched slightly as he said, "You came to the 7 cultivators of true virtue, sacred world for the Wind Heaven Fate sect. Your goal isn't just to visit the Beacon Emperor of the Beacon Heaven Fate sect, right? There is bound to be a reunion, and there is bound to be unification. The Feng Tian Soul School and the Feng Tian Fate School share the same origin. After being separated for so long, it's time for them to unite. A sharp light shot out from Devil's Knight's eyes as his body exuded a domineering aura. As expected, Nye Tian's eyes trembled and his heart sank. He had already guessed Devil's Knight's goal, but he was not sure. Since the latter had personally said it, it was naturally clear. Rather than saying that Devil's Knight came to unite the Feng Tian sect, it would be more accurate to say that he wanted to annex the Fire Beacon Heaven Fate sect and establish a new Feng Tian sect. You and I are both Beacon Emperors, so you should understand that the responsibility of the Beacon Emperor is to lead this sect to glory. Devil's Knight smiled again and said, "The reason why the Feng Tian sect declined so quickly is because of the discord between the Soul School and the Fate School. As long as the Soul School and the Fate School unite, the Feng Tian sect will definitely rise again." "You're right." Nye Tian's eyes trembled and revealed a hint of fierceness. He smiled and said, "I wonder if you are the Beacon Emperor of the new Feng Tian sect. Or, am I the Beacon Emperor?" The position of Beacon Emperor concerns the survival of the entire sect. Naturally, it will belong to the one who is capable. Devil's Knight smiled indifferently, his eyes filled with confidence. Very obviously, he was very confident that he could defeat Nye Tian. Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he did not say anything. At that time, Dongwang Zhengrong and Hayakuten won all 3 battles, but after each battle, Dongwang Zhengrong felt more pressure. But this point was shockingly similar to Nye Tian and Devil's Knight. Very even Nye Tian and Devil's Knight had a similar arranged battle. Only did not know if Nye Tian could replicate Dongwang Zhengrong's victory. Interesting. At this time, Ghost Cliff's vice sect leader Yen Qing, who had been silent for a long time, spoke. He looked at Nye Tian and Devil's Knight with a strange gaze. He smiled and said, "So there's another Feng Tian Soul sect other than Feng Tian Fate sect. Looks like my Gia sect will have to face 2 sects at the same time today." Devil's Knight looked over and smiled. "Since this emperor is here, this battle no longer belongs to Feng Tian Fate sect, but Feng Tian sect. Sect leader Yin, this emperor is a representative of Feng Tian sect. You don't have any objections, right?" "Of course." Yen Qing's lips twitched coldly, his eyes surging with undisguised killing intent. He had already sensed that Devil's Knight not only looked similar to Nye Tian, but also had the same cultivation, 9th level Heaven Tribulation. Both but Devil's Knight was the Beacon Emperor of Feng Tian Soul sect. He would definitely be a big problem in the future. Just why not kill 2 Beacon Emperors of Feng Tian sect in this battle? Devil's Knight faintly smiled and looked at Nye Tian. "Nye Tian, you and I will participate in the battle, and your follower will make up the numbers. Is that all right?" Follower? He was talking about Fan Zhong. In his words, Fan Zhong, who was originally the strongest, had become a dispensable person. I didn't expect this Beacon Emperor of Soul sect to have such a big tone at such a young age. Yen Qing couldn't help but sneer. I just don't know if his strength is enough to support such a big tone. Sect leader Yin, since you doubt this emperor's strength, then why don't this emperor fight you? Devil's Knight looked at Yen Qing with a cold and confident gaze. Yen Qing frowned, and his heart inexplicably trembled. Then he said in a cold tone, "Since the Beacon's emperor has spoken, how can I avoid the battle?" In the face of such a provocation, if Yen Qing didn't fight, he would appear to be a coward. Wind Demon and the others looked at Devil's Knight, their expressions changing again and again. Yuan, they originally thought that Nye Tian was already arrogant enough. They didn't expect this new Beacon's emperor to be even more arrogant than Nye Tian, directly challenging the strongest of the Gia sect, Yen Qing. Nye Tian Zhe frowned and naturally didn't fight. Since Devil's Knight took the initiative to fight the strongest Yen Qing, why should he stop him? No, not to mention, although Mo Ye's appearance had come as a surprise to Nye Tian, he had come at the perfect time. If it was an ordinary 9th level Heavenly Tribulation martial artist challenging Yen Qing, Nye Tian definitely wouldn't have the slightest chance. But it was Devil's Knight. He felt that there was a chance, and the chance was not small. Then, Gia Sek's third elder stood up and looked at Nie Tian with a cold smile, his expression stern. Life, Sek Beacon Emperor, then let me fight you. How about it? Nie Tian smiled faintly and gladly accepted the challenge. In this way, Fan Zhong's opponent became Gia Sek's fourth elder, who was the weakest person on the Gia Sek side. I've long heard of Flag Master Fan's great name. Please come and teach me. At this moment, fourth elder's figure directly moved. Like a long rainbow, he stood coldly in the sky and called out to fight Fan Zhong. Lord Beacon Emperor, I'm going down. Fan Zhong's eyes slightly darkened. After saying this to Nie Tian, he then rose into the sky and stood opposite fourth elder. Baidu search 881 Chinese network yen. No advertising words. Chapter 44:29. Fan Zhong and the fourth elder of the Gia sect stood facing each other in the sky. Next in the valley, everyone's eyes were focused on the two, looking forward to the fight. Ghost the Cliff sect and the Fengtian sect had always been enemies. Now that they were facing off against each other because of the Wind Demons clan, both sides would naturally go all out and fight to the death. The three battles were destined to be bloody. Flag leader Fan, please. The fourth elder wore a white robe and flew in the air. He looked gentle and elegant, but his face was extremely gloomy and murderous. Fan Zhong frowned as if he had sensed something, but he quickly calmed down. Boom! Fan Zhong's aura was wild and surged in all directions. Next, the crowd felt Fan Zhong's aura, but they were very calm and even a little disappointed. Very obviously, Fan Zhong's aura did not surprise them. Tianyue flag leader, one of the four flag leaders of the Fengtian sect, only has this much strength. How disappointing. The fourth elder looked at Fan Zhong from afar and laughed wildly. He did not take Fan Zhong seriously at all. How arrogant. Fan Zhong frowned and growled. He slammed his hand down. Suddenly, a surging power gathered in the void and turned into a mountain, pressing down on the fourth elder. Move of the heavenly mountain. The crowd below exclaimed in shock when they felt the oppressive aura surging towards them. Fan Zhong was called the Tianyue flag leader because of his Tianyue technique. The Tianyue technique was Fan Zhong's strongest attack. He used it right from the start, obviously trying to gain the upper hand and suppress the fourth elder. Swoosh! The fourth elder's eyes turned cold. Then he waved his hand in the air, and a white streak of light pierced through the air. It tore through the illusionary mountains in the air and attacked Fan Zhong with an astonishing force. Oh no! Fan Zhong immediately sensed danger. His expression suddenly changed, and he cried out in alarm. His figure rapidly retreated, but he was still a step too late. He was directly struck, turning into a bloody trail as he fell straight down. Bam! Fan Zhong crashed into the ground, creating a deep pit with a radius of several dozen meters. Only then did he manage to stand up. You can't even withstand a single blow. The fourth elder's eyes darkened as he sneered disdainfully. Fan Zhong stabilized his body. There was a horrifying wound on his chest, and blood dyed half of his body red. His face was as pale as paper, without any color. Nie Heaven arrived and activated his 10th life meridian. Immense life energy instantly healed the wounds on Fan Zhong's body. Thank you, Lord Beacon Emperor. Fan Zhong took a deep breath. His complexion turned slightly better, and he bowed to express his gratitude. Nie Tian nodded and did not speak. To be honest, he was a little disappointed with Fan Zhong's performance. He had already vaguely predicted that Fan Zhong would most likely lose this battle. However, he did not expect Fan Zhong to lose so thoroughly. In any case, Zhong was a flag master, yet he couldn't even withstand a single attack from the Gia sect's fourth elder. The gap between them was a little too big. Everyone was surprised. They had not expected Fan Zhong to be defeated so quickly. This just as Devil's Knight had said. Fan Zhong was just there to make up the numbers. No, the onlookers were even more shocked. Nie Tian's methods were actually so miraculous. In the blink of an eye, Fan Zhong had mostly recovered. This kid's power is indeed strange. Fourth elder was even more shocked. Fan Zhong had been injured by his broken rainbow. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least a few months to recover. However, Nietion had healed it in the blink of an eye. It was really strange. Lord Beacon Emperor, he's Mr. Fourth. Fan Zhong's expression returned to normal. He secretly transmitted his voice to Nietion. He's Mr. Fourth. Nietion's gaze trembled. He was quite surprised. It turned out that Mr. Fourth, who had been in contact with Fan Zhong, was the fourth elder of the Gias sect. Perhaps Wen Ho's disappearance was also related to this fourth elder. No wonder Fan Zhong had lost so badly. It seemed that fourth elder had long understood Fan Zhong's power. That was why he could defeat his opponent in one move. I hereby announce that Gias sect wins the first battle. At this moment, Wind Demon announced the results of the first battle. At the same time, it meant that the second battle was about to begin. Nietion looked at Gias sect's third elder. Before he could say anything, the latter had already leaped into the sky. Nietion, don't disappoint me. Nietion shook his head and smiled bitterly. Just as he was about to go up, he heard Devil's Knight's voice. Nietion twitched his lips. He did not say anything. Instead, he leaped into the sky. Everyone looked at the figures of Nietion and Third Elder with a strange look. Although the battle between Fan Zhong and Fourth Elder had ended unexpectedly, the two were still considered martial artists of the same level. But at this moment, Nietion and Third Elder were martial artists of two completely different levels. Nietion's cultivation was only in the ninth heaven tribulation realm. He was a peak holy king. At this realm, even the genius martial artists could at most fight with some low-level heavenly perception holy emperors. But Third Elder's cultivation was in the eighth heaven martial realm. He was only one step away from peak expert. In fact, most of the Sky Martial Saint ancestors stopped at LV8 of the Sky Martial Realm because LV9 of the Sky Martial Realm was a bottleneck in the Sky Martial Realm. It was extremely difficult for ordinary cultivators to break through. Once a martial artist broke through the ninth level of the Heaven Realm, they could be called a true expert, but they were still a bit away from the true peak. Actually, even if they were in the same realm of the ninth level of the Heaven Realm, because of the difference in talent, the gap in battle power between warriors was very large. It wouldn't be too much to describe it as the difference between heaven and earth. For example, the Yang God Sword Emperor, Hayakuten, Kashu, and the others were also in the ninth level of the Heaven Realm. However, they were clearly not on the same level as ordinary cultivators in the ninth level of the Heaven Realm. Yang Celestial Sword Emperor and the others could be called the extreme realm of Sky Martial Arts, meaning the extreme of the Sky Martial Saint ancestor. A ninth level Heavenly Tribulation Holy King against an eighth level Heaven Martial Realm Holy Ancestor. With such a difference in realm, was there really a chance? Almost everyone thought that Nietion would be killed by the Third Elder in one move. But Tang 13 and Devil's Knight, who truly understood Nietion, had burning gazes and looked forward to it. Lord Beacon Emperor, you and I are not warriors of the same level, but for the sake of the sect, I can only bully the weak. The Third Elder stood coldly in the sky, his long robe fluttering in the air. His aura was vigorous, and he had the demeanor of a grandmaster. In the eyes of others, the Third Elder's aura was already very strong, at least not something that Fan Zhong and the others could compare to. But for Nietion, the Third Elder could at most be considered barely passable. After all, Nietion had seen true experts before. With the Third Elder's strength, he probably couldn't even withstand the Yang God Sword Emperor's sword momentum. Dang! However, the current Nietion also couldn't withstand the Yang God sword momentum. However, he was confident that if he reached the eighth level of the Heaven Realm, not only would he be able to withstand the Yang God sword momentum, he could even fight the Yang God head-on. Make your move. Nietion's expression was indifferent. His eyes stared straight at the Third Elder, and at the corner of his eyes, a fiend god in verse mark appeared. At the same time, both of his eyes changed at the same time. Right. The eye demon's eye and the left eye, Heaven's punishment god's rebellion, opened at the same time. Baidu search 881 Chinese network. No advertising words. Chapter 4430. Nietion had the god-devil body, and the god-devil body allowed his eyes to form the god-devil eyes. His right eye was the god-devil eye, and his left eye was the heavenly punishment god-rebel. Under normal circumstances, if Nietion's opponent was a martial artist of the same realm, he would crush his opponent in his normal state. And if the opponent's realm was much higher than his, he would activate his god-fiend body in a critical situation. Only when the opponent was too strong would he use the demon eye to activate his god-fiend body and stimulate the god-fiend body strength. However, activating both the demon eye and the heavenly punishment divine rebellion at the same time was extremely rare. In fact, it was the only time. Think back then, when Nietion fought against the human emperor and the young human emperor, he didn't use the celestial demon eyes at the same time. However, the current battle was obviously different from the battle against the human emperor and the young human emperor. Within the battle of the Ren Huangs, the other party's cultivation was suppressed, and Nietion had the upper hand. But this was a battle against the third elder of the Gia sect. It was a battle of life and death. The Gia sect had always viewed the Beacon Heaven Fate sect as a great enemy. Now that the third elder had the chance to fight against the young Beacon Emperor, there was no reason for him not to give it his all. High up in the sky, Nietion's body was surging with incomparable God-fiend energy. God-fiend inscriptions extended from the corner of his eyes and covered his entire body. Hiruntu at that time, he was like a devil, his aura suppressing the heavens and earth. When the crowd below sensed Nietion's aura, their expressions changed drastically. Is this guy really only at the 9th level of heavenly tribulation? Even some high-level Tianwu Sane emperors might not be able to do that. So this is the power of the Beacon Emperor. It seems like Funkuin's loss was not undeserved. Wind Ghost and the others discussed with shocked expressions. Such as if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. It would have been very hard to believe that a 9th-level heavenly tribulation martial artist actually had such power. Beacon Emperor Nietion, so you were hiding your strength when you fought with Feng Kuan. The Wind Ghost's great elder Feng Yaoxing's pupils trembled, and a strange light surged in his eyes. He could sense that Nietion's aura was much stronger than when he fought against Feng Kuan. Obviously, the battle with Feng Kuan was not the limit of Nietion's strength. Difficult, it was hard to believe that this young martial artist in front of him, who was only at the 9th level of heavenly tribulation, actually made Feng Yaoxing feel that he was unfathomable. In fact, Feng Yaoxing didn't even feel this way when he faced opponents who were stronger than him. Only Mo Yi looked at Nietion with a calm expression, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly as he said, "It's just that we can't win this battle." The strength Nietion revealed was indeed world-shocking, and it even overturned everyone's understanding of the martial Tao. But, however, it was still too difficult for him to defeat the Ghost Cliff's third elder with such strength. Very good, come on. High up in the sky, the third elder stood with his hands behind his back. He had the air of a grandmaster, but his eyes were fixed on Nietion. He did not dare to be careless. He originally thought that this battle would be very easy, but he did not expect that Nietion would be so terrifying that he felt a little pressure. Change of heaven and earth. Nietion's eyes darkened slightly. The sword in the sky streaked across the sky. As the divine demon power raged, the power of stars also burst out. The two powerful forces condensed in the void, and a boundless sword shadow appeared, causing the world to tremble. It blasted towards the third elder. The third elder frowned slightly. He took a step forward, and a huge seal vortex appeared under his feet. Then, a huge pillar of light burst out and enveloped his whole body. Boom! The next moment, a terrible roar sounded, and the void shook. The moment the huge sword shadow fell on the light pillar, it directly collapsed and turned into waves of sword will, rushing in all directions. Nietion's figure also retreated dozens of meters before he could stabilize himself. What a powerful protective seal! Nietion's eyes darkened, and his expression changed greatly. He did not expect the third elder to be able to open such a terrifying protective seal in an instant. According to the rumors, the third elder is not only a powerful martial artist, but also a powerful sealer. It seems that the rumors are true. Wind Demon looked at the scene in the sky with a gloomy expression and thought to himself. He did not expect that the third elder, who had an overwhelming advantage in strength, would choose to be on the defensive. The others also did not expect the third elder to be so conservative, as if he was afraid of Nyetian. The third elder is indeed not an ordinary person. He can actually determine the true strength of Nyetian just by looking at Nyetian's aura. Feng Yaoxing expressed his approval of the third elder's strategy and secretly admired him. He asked himself if he was fighting against Nyetian, he would also choose to be more careful and defend. Because Nyetian was too strange, and he had repeatedly broken everyone's understanding. Against such a person, one must be extremely careful. Mr. Beacon Emperor, you are indeed strong. However, such strength is still not enough to break Ai's protective seal. The corner of the third elder's mouth curled up into a faint smile as he looked at Nyetian. However, his eyes were extremely gloomy, revealing a provocative smile. It was as if he had seen through Nyetian's scheme. Is that so? Nyetianling laughed and moved again. Sword in the sky slashed down again, but when the sword's shadow fell, it still could not break the third elder's protective seal. Kaboom! 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 In the sky, there was a continuous rumbling sound. Waves of sword essence fell from the sky like a raging tsunami, causing the ground to tremble violently. In the blink of an eye, Nyetian had slashed more than 10 times. Unfortunately, he was still unable to break through the third elder's protective seal. The protective seal looked like a faint pillar of light, but the power contained within it was unusually strong. It was like a great wall of steel, protecting the third elder within it. Everyone looked at Nyetian's figure, and their expressions changed. They began to discuss. This kid's strength is indeed terrifying, but he is too young and has too little combat experience. He is still not comparable to the third elder of Gia's sect. Yes, the third elder's protective seal cannot be broken at all. This Beacon Emperor is attacking like a madman, and he is only wasting his strength. The third elder has already won this battle without making a move. It seems that our Wind Demons clan is going to cooperate with Gia's sect. The Ghost Clan elders said, and some of them looked a little disappointed. Gia's sect had already won the first round. If they won the second round, there would be no need to continue the third round, and the Wind Demons clan would become a vassal force of Gia's sect. However, after witnessing Nyetian's strength, these elders suddenly felt that the Fengtian Fate sect had the hope of reviving. Thus, they were somewhat disappointed. Wait, look. But at this time, the first elder, Feng Yaoxing, suddenly let out a strange cry. His eyes trembled as if he had seen something incredible. Everyone's expression changed at the same time. They looked over, and the scene in front of them instantly shocked them. They saw a crack appear on the protective seal around the third elder's body. Chapter 44:31. The third elder's protective seal formed a pillar of light outside his body. It was originally perfect, but at that moment, a glaring crack appeared on it. Without a doubt, this crack was left behind by Nyetian's frenzied attacks. Gang, there were even people who said that Nyetian's crazy attacks were just a waste of energy. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. After a long time, everyone reacted, and the shock in their eyes was replaced by pleasant surprise. They had originally thought that the outcome of this battle was already decided. But since Nyetian showed signs of breaking through the third elder's protective seal, it meant that there was still hope for this battle. This kid's pupils are a little strange. High up in the sky, the third elder stood within the protective seal. There was no panic in his eyes, only confusion. It's in reality, the main reason why he chose to be on the defensive was because he wanted to see exactly how strong Nyetian was. At the same time, he also noticed that Nyetian's pupils were very strange. He seemed to be a martial artist with other pupils. But unlike other pupils, Nyetian's eyes were different. Furthermore, the aura of his eye power was extremely small, as though he was condensing something. The third elder had a vague feeling that Nietion's eyes were hiding an extremely terrifying power, just waiting to deal him a fatal blow. However, the third elder did not expect that Nietion would be able to break his protective seal with brute force. With his current strength, even an ordinary 8th level Heaven Martial Realm Sacred Ancestor would find it difficult to break through after activating the protective seal. In other words, Nietion's current strength was already no weaker than an 8th level Heaven Martial Arts Sacred Ancestor, and his true cultivation was only at the 9th level of Heavenly Tribulation. Hiruntu at this moment, the third elder finally understood how terrifying the opponent he was facing was. Third elder, can your protective seal still block one of my swords? At this moment, Nietion's voice rang out from the void. The sword wheel around him was incomparably violent, like a giant serpent dancing wildly. The sharp and surging aura seemed to be able to tear the heavens and earth apart. Nietion Lung stood in the air, and there was a strong smell of blood in the air. At around him, blood energy burned like flames. His battle intent raged, burning the heavens and sweeping the earth. Hiruntu at this moment, not only had Nietion activated his God-fiend eyes and God-fiend body, but he was also burning his blood chi. However, he could not maintain this state for long. Furthermore, it was a heavy burden on his martial body. Even with his 10th vital meridian, it was still extremely strenuous for him. Boom! As soon as Nietion's voice fell, the sky sword drew a dazzling arc in the air. The void sank slightly, and the space let out a low groan. Bang! In the next moment, when the sword shadow fell, the third elder's protective seal was finally unable to hold on any longer. With a loud sound, it shattered and turned into streams of light in the air. However, it was at this moment that third elder's hands formed a seal. His palms parted, and a beam of crimson light appeared in the air, moving with incredible speed to attack Nietion. Nietion instantly sensed danger, and his expression changed abruptly. He wanted to react, but it was already too late. Puff! In the void, wherever the scarlet light passed, a bloody line was drawn in the air. Nietion's body trembled slightly. A fist-sized hole had appeared in his chest. Blood flowed continuously and dyed his body red. Lord Beacon Emperor, Fan Zhong, and the others below exclaimed when they saw this. No matter how strong a martial artist was, once their heart was pierced, there was only one ending: death. Fengge Lingyun's eyes trembled. He was so overjoyed that he almost screamed. He could almost see the scene of Nietion's soul perishing. Third Elder had indeed killed Nietion. His plan to get someone else to do the dirty work had succeeded. However, at this moment, Nietion's body stabilized in the air and stood steadily. Everyone's eyes trembled violently as they exclaimed in unison. How could Tion survive after his heart was pierced? High up in the sky, Third Elder was stunned for a moment, but he instantly understood. That fatal crimson light missed Nietion's heart the moment it landed. To be more precise, it had pierced through half of Nietion's heart. However, even so, such a serious injury would be fatal to an ordinary martial artist. At most, they would be able to take a few more breaths. However, Nietion was able to stand again. This showed how tenacious his life force was. Fortunately, I have the 10th vital meridian. Nietion gritted his teeth and held on, but his face was extremely pale. With half of his heart destroyed, even if he had the 10th vital meridian, his life would still be in danger. Nietion, stop burning your blood chi. At this moment, Fat Cat's scream was heard. Its big face was pale with fright. At this moment, at this time, if Nietion focused and used the 10th vital meridian to repair the damage to his heart, Nietion should be able to recover very quickly. But if Nietion continued to burn his blood chi, his life would really be in danger. Since we've already come this far, how can I admit defeat? Nietion's eyes were deep and determined. His godly demonic eyes were still open and locked on to Third Elder. This guy is really crazy. Only then did everyone notice that Nietion was still burning his blood chi. Their gazes all changed. Under such circumstances, he still wanted to burn his blood chi to continue fighting. Nietion's fighting spirit was so fierce that it made people's hair stand on end. Nietion, in this state, you are at your strongest. Only Devil's Knight laughed coldly. His eyes glowed faintly as if he was waiting for something. In this world, other than Nietion himself, the person who understood Nietion the most was probably Devil's Knight. Devil's Knight was born from Nietion's body. The two of them had the same bloodline, but they were not father and son. Devil's Knight had experienced all of Nietion's battles. He knew that Nietion was at his strongest when he was in an extreme state of life and death. And moreover, Nietion's godly demonic eyes had not been used yet. Lord Beacon Emperor, are you still not going to admit defeat? Third Elder faced the heavily injured Nietion, but he was not in a hurry to attack. He was very cautious. Even at this moment, he did not dare to be careless. If Nietion was willing to admit defeat, he could give up on killing Nietion. Because as long as Nietion admitted defeat, the Wind Demons clan would become the vassal of the Gia sect. How could he let the heavily injured Nietion leave alive? And the Third Elder did not attack, mainly because he was afraid of Nietion. He had sensed the power of Nietion's eyes from the beginning. Therefore, he had a grudge against him for not using his eyes. If it was any other martial artist, he would have attacked long ago. But the Third Elder was a sealer. He could sense the horror of that pair of eyes. Nietion, however, gave a cold laugh and said in a disdainful and provocative tone, "You alone aren't enough." The Third Elder frowned. Even under such provocation, he was still very calm. "Third Elder, what are you waiting for? Why don't you kill him?" But at this time, Yanqing could not wait any longer. In his opinion, Nietion was already a corpse. He really did not understand why the Third Elder was still hesitating. "Since you're not attacking, then let me do it." At this moment, Nietion actually spoke. He sneered and his aura soared again. The sword intent was wild and swept across the world. Chapter 44:32. Boom! High up in the sky, Nietion's entire body erupted with sword intent. His entire person was like a fierce beast, wild and fierce, looking down on everything. Lunatic, this guy is really a lunatic. Everyone's eyes trembled. They were completely shocked by Nietion's actions. In such a serious injury, not only did Nietion not admit defeat, but he also took the initiative to attack again. If this wasn't a lunatic, what was? In the void, Nietion slashed down with his sword. Endless sword intent surged endlessly like raging waves. A terrifying and deep sonorous sword cry resounded between heaven and earth, like the whine of a giant beast. The sword cry was like thunder from the nine heavens, piercing through the clouds and splitting stones. Boom! Under the gaze of many pairs of eyes, the sword light around Nietion shone like the sun of a sword, blasting the world. Everyone, their expressions were dazed, and the shock in their hearts could no longer be expressed in words. It was hard to believe that such a surging sword actually came from a heavily injured 9th level Heaven Tribulation warrior. Stinking brat, since you are seeking death, this old man will fulfill your wish. Third Elder's eyes darkened when he felt the powerful sword momentum rushing towards him. He roared, and his entire body bloomed with light. It was as if holy light was shining all over. He was a sacred ancestor in the 8th level of the sky martial realm and naturally had his own dignity. Being suppressed by a sacred king like this, if he still wasn't angry, he would really be a coward. Die! The Third Elder roared and struck out with his palm. Heaven and earth shook violently, and the sky seemed like it was about to collapse. The power of one palm suppressed everything. High in the sky, a sword shadow and a palm print, like two giant beasts, resounded between heaven and earth. Boom! In the next moment, the two forces collided head-on. The world shook, and the destructive power completely erupted, turning into rolling waves that rushed in all directions. For a moment, the world lost its color, and the sun and moon lost their light. Boom, 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 boom. In the sky, endless wild forces surged, as if thousands of beasts were collapsing, as if they were going to annihilate the world. Everyone's expressions froze. This was the first time that Nyetian and the Third Elder had truly faced off against each other. They hadn't expected it to be so fierce. At this moment, not only were the forces in the sky crazily colliding and annihilating, even the ground was covered in deep fissures like scars on the ground. Madman at the center of the wave, Nyetian's body swayed incessantly. He allowed the wild forces to strike his body that was already dripping with blood, but he didn't care in the slightest. His eyes pierced through the waves and locked onto the Third Elder. Even though the Third Elder was very powerful, he could not stop himself from being pushed back by this level of impact. This is the moment. Nyetian's eyes gleamed as he finally grasped the opportunity. His lips curled into a cold smile as a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. With a flap of his wings, he forcefully withstood the impact of the raging waves as he dashed towards the Third Elder. The Elder was frantically retreating, trying to escape the impact of the raging waves. But right at this moment, he suddenly felt a strange chill assaulting him, and his expression changed. His intuition told him that this was the aura of death approaching. In the blink of an eye, the Third Elder stomped his feet in an attempt to activate a protective seal, but it was too late. The sound of flesh being torn apart was heard. The Third Elder instinctively lowered his head and saw his head flying away from his body. And on his neck, where his head should have been, there was actually a pillar of blood. He tried his best to move his hands, as if trying to pull down the flying head. However, he had no strength left and could not lift his hands. Everything was too late. The Third Elder did not even see clearly where the force came from before he was decapitated. The flying head's eyes were filled with despair, and soon it lost all signs of life. After a long while, the turbid waves in the sky dissipated. A silver-haired figure covered in blood appeared before everyone's eyes. It was Nyetian, but in Nyetian's palm was a bloody head. The Third Elder. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. They were all petrified. The Third Elder of the Gia sect had been killed. Nyetian had won. This is impossible. After a long time, Vice Sect leader Ghostcliff Yinqing roared like a frightened pheasant, all the hair on his body standing on end. The Third Elder had been defeated and killed. This was a fact that he could not accept. How could the young Beacon Emperor, who was already heavily injured, kill the Third Elder? But after a long period of shock, the others finally reacted. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Nyetian with unconcealable fear. Oni Cultivator in the 9th level of the Tribulation Realm, who had killed a Cultivator in the 8th level of the Sky Realm, was enough to make anyone fearful. Nyetian slowly descended. He raised his hand and returned the Third Elder's head to Yinqing. This was a provocation, a blatant provocation. Yinqing's eyes were bloodshot. He gritted his teeth as if he wanted to skin Nyetian alive. Nyetian was calm and even had a smile on his face. I announced that the Fengtian sect wins the second battle. After a long while, the Wind Demon announced the end of the second battle and the start of the third. After the Wind Demon finished speaking, he looked at Nyetian with a complicated expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Beacon Emperor, are you okay? Fan Zhong and the others came to Nyetian's side and asked anxiously. Nyetian took a deep breath and shook his head to indicate that he was fine. His complexion looked much better. Even a half of his heart was slowly healing. Fan Zhong and the others knew that this was the 10th meridian in Nyetian's body. They were all shocked. Nyetian recovered a bit and looked at the sky. He looked at Devil's Night from afar and thought, Devil's Night, I didn't disappoint you. I hope you won't disappoint me too. Nyetian wasn't very clear about Devil's Night's true strength. However, he knew that Devil's Night had a power that even he was afraid of. Defy the stars. Dang! At first, Nyetian thought that Devil's Night was born from the demon origin embryo. Even Devil's Night thought so. It wasn't until Hayakuten appeared that Qing Chi told Nietian the truth. Devil's Night was the same as Hayakuten. They were both born from the star Origin Stone. The star Origin Stone was where the power of the 10,000 stars gathered. However, Hayakuten and Devil's Night were born from it. They were dark and sinister existences. Before, Nietian didn't feel the aura of the stars from Devil's Night. He thought that Devil's Night didn't inherit the power of the stars. But the truth was that the power of the stars had undergone some kind of mutation in Mo Ye's body, and it had become the power of defying the stars. The answer to how strong Defy the Stars was could be found in Hayakuten, and according to Qing Chi, Devil's Night's potential was very likely to far surpass Hayakuten's. In the future, he would become an existence even more terrifying than Hayakuten. Therefore, Nietian was looking forward to seeing how strong Devil's Night was. Chapter 44:33. In the sky, Devil's Night and Yin Qing faced each other. One had an evil aura while the other had a mountainous aura. As the vice sect master of the Gia sect, Yin Qing was obviously stronger than the third elder. However, Mo Yi, who was at the same cultivation base as Nietian, didn't show the slightest fear in the face of such a powerful expert. Instead, a playful smile could be seen on his face, as if his opponent was nothing but a toy in his eyes. The crowd below could feel Devil's Night's arrogance and couldn't help but discuss. This guy looks very similar to the Beacon Emperor of the Fate sect. I wonder if they're brothers? Although they look similar, this Beacon's Emperor has a colder aura and is also more arrogant. I think that the two Beacon Emperors are brothers, and they are twins. Unfortunately, one is from the Fate sect, while the other is from the Soul sect. It's quite interesting. The crowd's eyes lit up as they said this. They were obviously looking forward to Devil's Night's performance. Demon ever since Night appeared, his arrogance was even greater than Nietian's. Moreover, he also had the title of the Beacon Emperor. Therefore, the crowd naturally guessed that he was no weaker than Nietian. The Beacon King's people, I have heard some rumors about them in the past. Fan Zhong leaned close to Nietian and whispered, "It is said that only those with 9 soul lines can become the Beacon Emperor of the Sky Beacon Soul sect. Since this person is the Beacon's Emperor, he most likely has 9 soul lines." Soul line? Nietian frowned in confusion. Yes. Fan Zhong nodded and explained. Soul lines are similar to lifelines. However, one represents the heavenly Tao soul matrix, while the other represents the martial Tao fate matrix. Our Sky Beacon Fate sect cultivates the martial Tao fate matrix, while the Sky Beacon Soul sect cultivates the heavenly Tao fate matrix. However, compared to people who cultivated their birth providences, there were even fewer people who cultivated their soul providences. Therefore, when the Fengtian sect split, the stronger Fengtian Fate sect inherited the original sect, while the Fengtian Soul sect was forced to leave. So that's how it is. Nietian nodded slightly and understood a lot. He guessed that the reason why the Sky Beacon Soul sect chose the Beacon Emperor was similar to the Sky Beacon Fate sect. Institute, therefore, the Heaven Beacon art that Nietian cultivated was not the complete one. It was only the Heaven Beacon life art. And the entire Heaven Beacon art should contain the Heaven Beacon Fate sect and the Heaven Beacon Soul art. If that's the case, doesn't that mean the first Beacon Emperor I saw had 9 life veins and 9 soul veins at the same time? Nietian suddenly thought of something and was shocked. It was no wonder that even though the first Beacon Emperor had died, his spirit could not be destroyed, and he could still maintain such great power. Brat, you really are the most arrogant person I've ever seen. Yin Qing stared coldly at Devil's Night and felt the disdain in the latter's eyes. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said solemnly. After the third elder's crushing defeat, Yin Qing was clearly much more cautious. He didn't want the third elder's tragedy to repeat itself. Is that so? Devil's Night smiled coldly and said mockingly, I hope that sect leader Yin isn't the stupidest person I've ever seen. What do you mean? Yin Qing's face was so dark that it was almost dripping water. He asked cold. Because this is the first time I've seen a 9th-level sky martial realm sacred ancestor be afraid of a 9th-level heavenly tribulation sacred king. Devil's Knight laughed and raised his eyebrows. Tell me, aren't you the stupidest person? You, Yin Qing growled. He didn't know how to refute. Indeed, he was a little afraid of Devil's Knight. He could sense that Devil's Knight's aura was even stranger than Yetian's, and Devil's Knight's composure made him even more uncertain. He had already seen a 9th-level heavenly tribulation sacred king kill an 8th-level sky martial realm sacred ancestor. So it was not impossible that he, a 9th-level sky martial realm sacred ancestor, would die at the hands of a 9th-level heavenly tribulation sacred king, Devil's Knight. When everyone saw this scene, their expressions became strange and complicated. At this moment, anyone could see that Yin Qing was really a little afraid. But who would dare to laugh at Yin Qing? If Devil's Knight was fighting any one of them, would they be afraid? Sect Leader Yin, are you still not going to make a move? Devil's Knight saw that Yin Qing was flustered and exasperated, and provoked him even more disdainfully. You're courting death. Yin Qing could no longer restrain himself. He roared, and suddenly, a shocking power surged up like a torrential red stream, as if to swallow the sun, the moon, and the world. Boom! High up in the sky, an explosion sounded. Everyone below felt an extremely powerful pressure, as if even the ground had sunk a few inches under the pressure of this power. Is this the power of a peak expert? Everyone's eyes trembled, and their expressions were filled with shock. The power that Yin Qing had erupted with was far from what the 3rd Elder and the 4th Elder could compare with. Heaven's the 9th level of the martial realm, and the 8th level of the sky martial realm were indeed different. Wengue Lingyun's eyes trembled slightly, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. Not long ago, he had just broken through to the 9th level of the sky martial realm. He originally thought that he could be ranked in the 7th sacred world of cultivators, but now that he saw Yin Qing, he knew how big the gap was. Yanqing was the vice-sect leader of the Gia sect. Obviously, he was not the strongest expert of the Ghost Cliff, but his strength was definitely above that of the Wind Demon. Nietian looked at Yin Qing, but the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He was not the least bit surprised. Yin Qing's strength was indeed not bad, but he was still far away from the true peak. Not to mention comparing Yin Qing to the young Godsword Emperor and the others. Even the deans of the 5 academies were far inferior. Brat, I like to see how strong you are to dare to be so arrogant. Yin Qing roared in the sky, and his aura suddenly rose several times. Then he slapped his palm, and a surging current appeared. It was as if the Milky Way was falling from the sky, and it pressed down on Devil's Knight. Nietian Guang couldn't help but tremble. Just from the power of this palm, he could see that Yin Qing was more terrifying than the 3rd Elder. If the person he was fighting just now was not the 3rd Elder, but Yin Qing, the consequences would have been even more serious. Facing this attack that could destroy the heavens and the earth, Devil's Knight's figure moved, and he actually directly rushed over. Bang! In the next instant, a muffled sound came from the sky. Under everyone's gaze, Devil's Knight unexpectedly exploded in the sky, and he turned into a bloody light. And some people's eyes trembled, and they couldn't believe this bloody scene. Such as it was normal for an ordinary 9th Heaven Tribulation King to be killed by Yin Qing's palm, but Devil's Knight was the Beacon's Emperor, an existence comparable to Nietian. Nietian Guang also frowned a little puzzled. With such strength, how dare you be so arrogant in front of me? You're asking for death. Yin Qing was stunned at first, and then he confirmed it, and then he laughed coldly. Is that so? But before he finished speaking, a cold laugh came from behind him. Huh? Yin Qing was suddenly stunned, and his expression suddenly changed. He immediately turned around, and the scene in front of him made him unable to help but be stunned. High up in the sky, there were tens of thousands of figures standing coldly like divine soldiers descending from the sky. But looking closely, these people's faces were all the same. They were all Devil's Knight. Chapter 44:34. High up in the sky, the silhouettes of Devil's Night filled the sky. There were tens of thousands of them, sending chills down everyone's spine. That was one of his clones. At this moment, everyone realized that the one that was killed by Yin Qing was merely one of Devil's Night's clones. However, everyone's expressions did not ease. Instead, they were even more shocked. Nobody there noticed that Devil's Night had used clones. Even the powerful wind ghost Ling Yun and Tang 13, who had the ghost eye, didn't notice anything. Devil's Night's capabilities were truly eerie. How is this possible? Yin Qing finally realized and growled. Since the moment Devil's Night appeared, he had been watching. When did Devil's Night use his clones? Following which, Yin Qing sensed the demonic night before him, and to his surprise, every single one of them had the exact same aura. It was hard to believe that Devil's Night could summon so many clones, and every single one of them was exactly the same as his original self. Headmaster Yin, are you satisfied with this kind of battle? Devil's Night finally spoke. They spoke at the same time. Instantly, their voices were like the voice of the devil that penetrated Yin Qing's ears, making him even more annoyed. I will kill all of your clones. Let's see how you hide. Yin Qing was completely enraged. His chi roared as both of his palms reached out. Instantly, an endless amount of energy surged out. Like thousands of dancing snakes, they covered the sky and pressed towards Devil's Night's 10,000 clones. His chi covered the sky and the earth. Like a flood or a beast, it was as if it wanted to destroy everything. Devil's Night's clones moved at the same time. They all retreated in a frenzy, as if they were trying to hide. Instantly, the sky above was a blur. Waves after waves of energy continued to chase after Devil's Night's clones. However, the clones were extremely agile and were able to evade the attacks. Everyone was stunned by this scene and only reacted after a long while. This beacon's Emperor's spiritual strength is really strong. To think that he can control so many doppelgangers so exquisitely. These clones aren't that strong, but it won't be easy to kill them all. As long as I don't kill all the doppelgangers, my true body won't be exposed. Looks like this battle will be interesting. No one would have thought that this battle would turn out like this. Fat, don't you feel that there's something wrong with the auras of Devil's Night's doppelgangers? Nie Tian frowned as he looked at the scene in the sky. He seemed to have noticed something unusual. No, this isn't just a doppelganger. It's some kind of soul lattice rune. The fat cat was silent for a moment. Then, she suddenly realized something and cried out in surprise. Soul grid runes? Nie Tian was taken aback. He immediately recalled that the stone statues he had seen in the Heaven's Fire Beacon sect also had many soul patterns carved on them. No wonder he felt that the aura of Devil's Night's doppelganger was inexplicably familiar. Yes, the fat cat nodded heavily. There was a hint of shock on her face as she said, and these aren't just simple soul grid runes. They're runes formed by the spirit of the soul line. What do you mean? Nie Tian furrowed his brows. He was confused. Nie Tian, do you still remember the runes on the Heaven Beacon's stone statues? The fat cat didn't answer his question directly. Of course, Nie Tian didn't hesitate. He only noticed Devil's Night's abnormality when he thought of the runes on the stone statues. These doppelgangers of Devil's Night are the same as the runes on the Heaven Beacon's stone statues. They're all formed by the spirit of the soul line. The fat cat was shocked and confused at the same time. She murmured, with his soul lattice cultivation, it's impossible for him to form so many soul line spirits. There are so many soul line spirits. You're saying that the spirit of the soul line is similar to the blood of the lifeline, and these runes are a kind of power that comes from Devil's Night soul lattice, right? Nie Tian's brows furrowed even tighter. He only understood half of what the fat cat said. You can say that. The fat cat nodded and said, from my observation, these soul lattice doppelgangers are equivalent to dozens of stone statues in the Heaven Beacon sect. Dozens of stone statues? Nie Tian's expression changed, and he almost exclaimed in surprise. He remembered that the fat cat once said that each of the Heaven Beacon's stone statues was no weaker than a sky martial divine ancestor. Devil's Knight was able to form dozens of doppelgangers in the blink of an eye. This was too terrifying. In the past, Qing had said that the reason why Hayakuten was so powerful was because of the Against the Stars power. However, Devil's Knight did not have the aura of the Stars power. This meant that the Stars power had undergone a drastic change in his body. In other words, Devil's Knight's body had given birth to an Against the Stars power that was far stronger than Hayakuten's. Nie Tian's dark side was originally stronger than Dong Wang Zhengrong's. From the moment Devil's Knight was born, he was more talented than Hayakuten. In addition, the Fiend God nascent embryo could fuse with the Star Origin Stone, which proved that the power of the Fiend God was not weaker than the power of the stars. Therefore, Mo Ye's star-defying power was absolutely terrifying beyond imagination. Perhaps this was why Devil's Knight had such a strong soul lattice. In fact, Nie Tian had already prepared himself for Devil's Knight's power. However, he didn't expect Devil's Knight to be this strong. Nie Tian, look. At this time, Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something and exclaimed. Nie Tian's eyes widened when he saw Devil's Knight's soul lattices standing in the sky. Each of them occupied a part of the sky, and their auras were linked together. This is... In the next moment, Nie Tian finally understood. His expression suddenly changed, and he gulped. Only then did he say two words, a formation. That's right, Moya's tens of thousands of soul lattice doppelgangers didn't appear in the void in a chaotic manner. Instead, they were arranged in an orderly manner, strictly following some kind of rule. At the same time, their auras were slowly released, linking together to form a formation. This formation seems to be similar to the stone statue formation of Feng Tianming sect. Next, Nie Tian made an even more terrifying discovery. His heart pounded so hard that it felt like it was going to jump out. Although he didn't know much about the stone statue formation of Feng Tianming sect, he could still understand the basic structure of the formation. At this moment, the arrangement of these soul lattices was very similar to the Feng Tianming stone statues. Yes, Fat Cat also noticed this and nodded heavily. It seems like this fella has some understanding of the stone statue formation. The stone statue formation of Feng Tianming sect was the former Feng Tian sect. The Feng Tianming sect was separated from the Feng Tian sect. Since Devil's Knight became the beacon emperor of Feng Tianming sect, it was reasonable for him to have some understanding of the stone statue formation. Moreover, the Soul sect cultivated the heavenly Tao Soul lattice, so they naturally had a better understanding of formation seals. What's going on? In the sky, Yanqing wanted to forcefully kill Devil's Knight's soul lattices. However, not only did he fail, he also felt a strange pressure coming from the surrounding space. Moreover, the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. His expression changed, and he had a bad feeling about this. Please remember this book's domain name. 4M. Chapter 4435. Everyone looked at the scene in the sky. Some people also felt that something was wrong, and their expressions began to change. Is sect leader Yin hiding his strength? Why do I feel that his aura is getting weaker and weaker? Why is he still hiding his strength at this time? He is clearly being suppressed. A heavenly tribulation king sage is suppressing a divine ancestor in the 9th tier of the sky martial arts realm. Is this possible? More and more people saw the clues, and their eyes were filled with shock and confusion. Devil's Knight's soul clones did not look strong. Why was Yanqing not able to kill them, but instead being suppressed? Finally, someone saw the clues and exclaimed, "Don't you think that these clones look like a formation when they are linked together?" Everyone's eyes trembled violently as they looked at the sky and understood. At this time, everyone could feel that the aura of Devil's Knight's clones was getting stronger and stronger. The vigorous aura was like an invisible hand that was holding Yanqing down. So it's a formation. It seems that I have underestimated you. Yanqing finally understood. His eyes were trembling, not out of fear, but out of anger and fighting spirit. Although he had been furious just now, he had not lost his reason, so he had held back. However, this gave Devil's Knight an opportunity to trap him in the formation. Kid, let me see how strong this formation of yours is. Then, Yin Qing laughed wildly. Suddenly, power surged around him, and waves of air rolled. The aura of his bloodline spread and actually condensed outside Yin Qing's body into a giant green python. Then, Yin Qing laughed wildly. Yin Qing's bloodline power. Seeing this, everyone's eyes trembled violently, and they exclaimed. It seemed that Yin Qing was really angry at this time. Kid, is my true martial dragon strong enough to break your formation? Yin Qing laughed wildly. His face was distorted, and his whole body was trembling. He was like a fierce beast that was about to break out of its cage. Up in the void, Emo Yi didn't say anything. Instead, his avatars continued to gather and condense into a grand formation. It was as if he wanted to use the power of the grand formation to suppress Yin Qing to death. Everyone's nerves were taut, and they didn't even dare to blink for fear of missing out on a wonderful moment. Apart from Nietian and a few other young martial artists, everyone else present was a sacred ancestor at the advanced heaven martial state. In their opinion, it was basically impossible for Devil's Knight to defeat Yin Qing with a formation. After all, Yin Qing was a sacred ancestor at the 9th level of the Sky martial realm. Even in the entire 7th cultivator of true cultivators, he was a powerful expert. If he was really crushed to death by a large array, that would be too aggrieving. Roar! At that moment, Yin Qing's silhouette moved. He stomped on the ground, like a dragon soaring into the sky. The true martial dragon let out a violent roar, like an azure dragon. In an instant, wherever the true martial dragon's body passed through, a torrent surged out in a frenzy, surging and surging. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst intense, rumbling sounds, the grand formation formed by the soul clone actually showed signs of being on the verge of collapse. Ha ha! Trying to trap me with such a small formation? What a joke! Yin Qing laughed maniacally when he saw this. The true martial dragon's aura grew stronger, causing the grand formation to rumble endlessly. It seemed like it was on the verge of collapsing. Looks like the Beacon's Emperor is going to lose. Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. They seemed a little nervous. Nietian furrowed his brows. He was a little confused. He could sense that the power contained in the soul clone was far greater than this. It shouldn't be able to break through it. Could it be that Devil's Knight is planning something else? A puny snake dares to break through my grand formation? At that moment, Devil's Knight finally spoke. His deep voice echoed in the grand formation. It sounded like the cry of a ghost, and it was filled with a frightening eeriness. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, all the soul clone moved at the same time. In an instant, the entire grand formation was activated, and it rumbled endlessly, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Everyone's expression changed at the same time. They could sense that the pressure coming from the sky had increased by several times. Yin Qing's figure was engulfed by the grand formation. Even the giant, true, martial dragon disappeared from the grand formation. What was going on? The crowd was in disbelief at the scene before them. What did Devil's Knight do to suppress Yin Qing again? From the looks of it, Yin Qing was completely suppressed this time, and there was no way he could fight back. High up in the sky, the grand formation rumbled as the soul clone rotated at high speed. Gradually, the soul clone changed shape and turned into strange runic inscriptions. The runic inscriptions connected together, and from afar, it looked like a giant ball of darkness. In the beginning, one could still see the violent shock waves from the ball of darkness, but after a while, the shock waves disappeared. It seemed like Yin Qing was still resisting, but he had completely lost the ability to do so. After a while, the ball of darkness that was formed by the soul clone's runic inscriptions began to shrink. It was like a spherical whirlpool was collapsing. Everyone couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. At this moment, Yin Qing was in the ball of darkness. If the ball of darkness continued to shrink, wouldn't Yin Qing be squeezed to death? Such a simple, primitive, yet brutal method was far beyond the expectations of everyone present. While everyone was still in shock, a figure appeared from the void like a sharp sword, standing coldly above the ball of darkness. Look, it's the beacon's emperor. Everyone's eyes trembled, and someone exclaimed in surprise. The person who appeared was none other than Devil's Knight. It turned out that Devil's Knight's real body did not appear among the soul clones. Instead, he had used a clever method to hide himself. Perhaps, even if Yen Qing killed all the soul clones, he might not be able to find Devil's Knight. Eyebrows furrowed, yet Tian looked at Mo Yi and muttered to himself. Perhaps this guy was a soul-powered doppelganger from the very beginning. At the start of the battle, Yen Qing killed one of Devil's Knight's clones with a single palm strike. However, no one knew when Devil's Knight's real body disappeared. Now, it seemed that the biggest possibility was that when Devil's Knight first appeared, it was not his real body, but a soul clone. Nie Tian's gaze locked onto Devil's Knight from afar. He saw a cold and sinister smile on the latter's face, as if he was waiting for something. At this moment, the people from Gia's sect had already lost all hope. They could only watch from afar and pray for a miracle to happen. After a while, the ball of runic inscriptions had shrunk from a few thousand meters to a few meters. It's about time. Devil's Knight looked at the ball of runic inscriptions and murmured. His face was full of joy, as if he was about to complete a wonderful work of art. He could not help but feel excited. Soul runic inscriptions, stone, statue array. At this moment, Fat Cat's excited voice suddenly rang in Nie Tian's mind. I understand now. Please remember this book's domain name. 4M, Chapter 4436. Fat, what do you understand? Nie Tian, who was originally concentrating on observing Devil's Knight, was startled by Fat Cat's words. He immediately calmed down and asked, I understand what this fellow wants to do. Fat Cat was very agitated. Her eyes were trembling, as if she was afraid. Do what? Nie Tian frowned, not knowing why Fat Cat was so agitated. Fat Cat did not answer directly. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, Devil's Knight could have easily killed Yen Qing with the Soul Lattice Doppelganger, but he didn't do so. Instead, he used the doppelganger to activate a large formation. Then, he used the formation to carve the Soul Lattice runes into Yen Qing's divine soul. What do you mean? Nie Tian could not help but be stunned. But he already felt that something was wrong. Even his voice changed slightly. Carving the Soul Lattice runes into a person's divine soul. This was the first time Nie Tian heard of such a thing. Using the Soul Lattice runes to control Yen Qing. Fat Cat's face darkened as she said heavily. Nie Tian's eyes flickered nonstop. Although he did not fully understand, he more or less understood Fat Cat's meaning. It seemed that Devil's Knight wanted to carve his Soul Lattice runes into Yen Qing's divine soul, replacing Yen Qing's divine soul and completely controlling the latter. If that was the case, then once Devil's Knight succeeded, wouldn't Yen Qing become a marionette, a puppet? At this time, the rune ball had already shrunk to the size of a person. Moreover, it was slowly carving the outline of a person. Everyone looked at the strange scene in front of them, and their expressions became sluggish. They did not dare to believe their eyes. They were all powerhouses and had seen countless strange things in their lives. But what they saw in front of them was definitely the strangest thing they had ever experienced in their lives. Slowly, the rune ball completely shrunk, as if it had disappeared. A figure appeared in front of everyone. Yen Qing. But at this moment, Yen Qing's expression was lifeless, and his eyes were empty. He was like a walking corpse, without the slightest elegance to speak of. What's wrong with him? Everyone looked at Yen Qing, wondering what had happened to him. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he sensed Yen Qing's aura. Yen Qing's body no longer had the same aura as before. His entire body was occupied by Devil's Knight's Soul Lattice runes. From now on, your name will be. Devil's Knight thought for a moment, then said, Puppet 1. Yes, master. Yen Qing nodded and bowed in response. This. Hearing how Yen Qing addressed Devil's Knight, everyone's faces changed, and they didn't know what to say. How did the vice sect leader of Gia's sect turn into a servant who respects Devil's Knight so much in a blink of an eye? What was going on? Devil's Knight's figure moved and appeared in front of everyone. Puppet 1 immediately followed him like a walking corpse. He's already my puppet. The result of this battle should be obvious. Devil's Knight looked at Wind Demon and smiled evilly. Puppet. Wind Demon's pupils shrank, and his tongue didn't listen to him. How did the vice sect leader of Gia's sect, an expert at the peak of the 7th Cultivator Sacred World, become a puppet of Devil's Knight? What exactly did Devil's Knight do to Yanqing? At this time, Gia's sect's 4th elder roared and pointed at Devil's Knight with killing intent. Smelly brat. What did you do to sect leader Yin? Devil's Knight frowned, and Puppet 1 behind him suddenly moved. It took a step forward and directly sent a palm out. Bang! With a muffled sound, 4th elder was directly sent flying. After landing on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was originally not Yanqing's opponent, so he was caught off guard and directly hit hard. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at Devil's Knight in horror and fear, not even daring to breathe loudly. Yanqing, who was originally the strongest person on the scene, inexplicably became Puppet 1. This was a heavy blow to everyone. Until now, no one had figured out how Devil's Knight turned Yanqing into Puppet 1. Devil's Knight didn't explain anything and just looked at Wind Demon and asked, Wind Demon Clan leader, can you announce the result? Of course. Wind Demon reacted and immediately announced, the Fontian sect wins the 3rd battle. The Fontian sect won 2 out of 3 battles and smoothly won the entire battle. This also meant that the Wind Demon Clan and the Fontian sect would form an alliance. Let's go. 4th elder looked at Nietan and the others angrily and shouted in a low voice. He led the people of Gia's sect and prepared to leave. Wait. However, at this moment, Mo coldly smiled. His eyes emitted a cold light as he slowly swept his gaze across the 4th elder and the others. He indifferently said, the old ones can stay, the young ones can leave. The old ones were naturally the few elders of Gia's sect, and the young ones were the few young disciples. The young disciples didn't matter, but the few elders were not weak. It would be troublesome to keep them alive, so it was better to just kill them. What do you want to do? 4th elder felt the coldness in Devil's Knight's eyes and could not help but change his expression, revealing an unconcealable fear. What do you think? The corner of Mo's mouth twitched coldly. The puppet behind him directly struck out with its palm. Before the other elder could even react, he was directly smashed into a pile of minced meat. Immediately after, Puppet 1 was about to attack 4th elder again, but it was stopped by Nietan. Wait a minute. Nietan looked at Devil's Knight and said hurriedly, keep him alive, he still has use. Devil's Knight smiled at Nietan, and then Puppet 1 retreated. Puppet 1 was his soul matrix puppet. His divine soul had already been replaced by his soul matrix runes, so he did not need to order it at all. As long as he willed it, he could freely control it, just like a clone of his divine soul. Fanzhong, Nietan shouted. Fanzhong immediately understood and took a step forward. His large hand descended and held 4th elder tightly. The heavily injured 4th elder could no longer resist. Instantly, he felt a terrifying force invading his body, causing him to feel the pain of being burned. Mr. 4th, this is the divine burning life, fire, unique to our Fontian sect. If you want to live, perform well. Fanzhong smiled cold and brought 4th elder in front of Nietan. Knowing that his identity had been exposed, 4th elder was like an eggplant that had been hit by frost. When Ho was kidnapped by the Gia sect, right? Nietan frowned and asked cold. Yes. 4th elder hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. The corner of Nietan's mouth twitched. He then looked at the few disciples from the Gia sect and said, go back and tell your sect leader that the Beacon Emperor of the Fontian sect is willing to exchange your 4th elder for Wenho. Yes. The disciples reacted and nodded. They did not dare to stay any longer and turned to leave. Devil's Knight looked at Nietan and did not say anything. Please remember this book's domain name. 4M. Chapter 4437. Wind Demon Clan, Conference Hall. Nietian asked the people from Gia sect to bring a message to the Gia sect master that he was willing to exchange the fourth elder for one hoe. Then, he let the disciples from Gia sect leave. After that, Nietian handed the fourth elder over to Fan Zhong and Wen Lun. Then, he followed the Wind Demon and the others to the Wind Demon clan's conference hall with Devil's Night. In the conference hall, Wind Demon sat in the main seat. Below him were the elders and other higher-ups of the Wind Demon clan. Other than the people from the Wind Demon clan, there were only two outsiders, Nietian and Devil's Night. Next, they were going to talk about the alliance between the Wind Demon clan and the Fengtian sect. Originally, the matter was very simple. Since the Gia sect was defeated, the Wind Demon clan could directly form an alliance with the Fengtian Fate sect. But now, because of the appearance of Devil's Night, the ally had changed from the Fengtian Fate sect to the Fengtian sect. So, the problem was that the Fengtian sect had not been unified yet. The Fate sect and the Soul sect each had a Beacon Emperor. Which Beacon Emperor would be in charge? At this time, Wind Demon had completely calmed down. He glanced at Niet Tian and Devil's Night and asked in a strange tone, "Lord Beacon Emperors, you want to form an alliance with the Wind Demon clan. Do you mean to represent your own sect or the Fengtian sect together?" He asked. Wind Demon had already let go of the fact that Niet Tian had injured Feng Kuan. Moreover, he had no choice but to let go of the current situation. What he did not expect was that after the appearance of Devil's Night, there would be such a dramatic turn of events. From Devil's Night and Niet Tian, Wind Demon had already seen the huge potential of the Fengtian sect. Therefore, from this point of view, the alliance between the Wind Demon's clan and the Fengtian sect was very beneficial. Naturally, it's to jointly represent the Fengtian sect. Without waiting for Niet Tian to speak, Devil's Night beat him to it, saying, "This emperor has already said, there will always be reunion, and there will always be unity. The Fengtian sect has been separated for so long, it should have long been unified." His tone was light, but it was full of vigor, giving off a very unyielding feeling. Wind Demon was not surprised, because he had already guessed that Devil's Night would say this. So he coughed dryly and said, "Then may I ask, who will be in charge? Let's make decisions together." This time, Devil's Night wasn't too forceful. Instead, he smiled and said, "That's good." Wind Demon was stunned for a moment, thinking that Devil's Night would forcefully suppress Niet Tian and act arbitrarily. Then, Wind Demon's gaze swept across the elders and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, this clan leader has decided to form an alliance with the Fengtian sect. We will support each other, benefit each other, share weal and woe, and form an alliance forever. Do you have any objections?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone nodded in agreement. They had already seen the strength of Niet Tian and Devil's Night. With two such young and terrifying Beacon Emperor, why would they worry that the Fengtian sect wouldn't rise? However, they were also a little worried that the Fengtian sect would have internal strife. Now that the Fengtian Fate sect and the Fengtian Soul sect had yet to be unified, the existence of two Beacon Emperors at the same time was a big problem. As the saying goes, two tigers cannot live on the same mountain. Between Niet Tian and Devil's Night, only one could be the Beacon Emperor. The other would either lower his position or leave in dejection. Based on the current situation, Devil's Night's strength was stronger and his methods were also sharper. He seemed to have an advantage over Niet Tian. However, Niet Tian was the Beacon Emperor of the Fate sect. Back then, the Fate sect was already far stronger than the Soul sect. It was unknown how the Soul sect behind Devil's Night was compared to the current Fate sect. If the Soul sect was weaker than the Fate sect, then Niet Tian would still have chance. Niet Tian glanced at Devil's Night, and a bitter smile flashed across the corner of his mouth. Devil's Night had just arrived and had already shown his ambition. How could he be on equal footing with him? Between the two of them, there would definitely be a struggle for the position of Beacon Emperor. However, now that they were in the territory of the Wind Demon's clan, the two of them had to at least maintain a superficial peace. The Wind Demon looked at Niet Tian and Devil's Night and said with a faint smile, "Two Beacon Emperors, My clan is willing to form an alliance with the Fengtian sect. Both sides will be equal and mutually beneficial. What do you think? In fact, he was very satisfied with the current situation. At that time, he had suggested for the Gia sect to compete with the Fengtian Fate sect because he had lost his mind due to the matter with Fengkuan. Now that he thought about it, rather than being a vassal of the Gia sect, it was better to be an ally of the Fengtian sect. Yes, Tian nodded in agreement. This was what he and the Wind Demon's clan had agreed on before. They would be equal and mutually beneficial. Wind Demon clan leader, what do you think about the Fengtian sect compared to the Gia sect? Devil's Knight asked with a strange smile. Wind Demon was stunned at first and said, "Why would Beacon's Emperor ask such a question? Didn't the battle just now prove it? The Gia sect has already been defeated by the Fengtian sect." Devil's Knight nodded and said, "I heard that the Wind Demon's clan and the Gia sect are not in an alliance on equal footing. Instead, they are dependent on the Gia sect." Beacon's Emperor, what do you mean by that? No matter how stupid the Wind Demon was, he could tell what Devil's Knight was implying. His face darkened and he asked cold, "Since the Wind Demon's clan is willing to be a vassal of the Gia sect, why can't they be a vassal of the Fengtian sect, which is stronger than the Gia sect?" Devil's Knight laughed and said with confidence, "You." The Wind Demon's eyes trembled. He was so angry that he could not speak. He did not expect Devil's Knight to be so overbearing. He wanted to change something that had already been decided. "Clan leader, please calm down." At this moment, the great elder Feng Yaoxing stood up and looked at Tian. "Life sect Beacon Emperor, what do you think?" With Devil's Knight's overbearing attitude, it was impossible to persuade him. Hence, he could only turn to Tian for help. "Devil's Knight, I've already agreed with the Wind Demon's clan that we'll form an alliance and have equal status. You didn't raise any objections before the battle, but now you're changing your previous proposal. It doesn't seem appropriate." Tian frowned and looked at Devil's Knight. He asked himself honestly, as the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian life sect, he certainly hoped that the Wind Demon's clan could submit to the Fengtian sect and become a vassal force. However, since some things had been agreed upon, how could he go back on his word? "That's what you said to them, not me." Devil's Knight sneered and asked, "Do you think it's possible for a dragon and a snake to cooperate and have equal status?" Tian's face darkened and looked very ugly. As a member of the Fengtian sect, it didn't seem right for him to forcefully oppose Devil's Knight. However, if he supported Devil's Knight, he would be going back on his word. It was wrong to stand on either side. "Beacon's Emperor, if you insist, then my Wind Demon's clan will not form an alliance with your soul sect. We can only form an alliance with the life sect." Wind Demon suddenly stood up and said in a cold voice. Unexpectedly, Devil's Knight also stood up and asked coldly, "The Fengtian sect is originally one, but the Wind Demon's clan wants to divide the soul sect and the life sect. Do you want to split the Fengtian sect?" This Feng Yaoxing saw that the two were at daggers drawn, and his old face was stiff and embarrassed. He couldn't help but look at Tian again. Tian also looked awkward. After thinking for a while, he still stood up. Chapter 44:38. When Devil's Knight saw Tian stand up, he didn't wait for the latter to speak and said, "Tian, I have to remind you that you are the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian Fate sect." After all, the matter in front of them was related to the interests of the sect. How could Tian, the Beacon Emperor, speak up for the Wind Demon's clan? Even though Tian had promised the two sides to form an alliance on equal terms, the situation had changed at this time. The target of the alliance had changed from the Fengtian Fate sect to the Fengtian sect. It was normal for the status of both sides to change when the target of the alliance changed. Tian looked at Devil's Knight and asked, "Devil's Knight, your ambitions shouldn't be limited to the Fengtian sect, right?" "Of course." Devil's Knight smiled and said, "If I were in charge of the Fengtian sect, I would be able to make the Fengtian sect dominate the 7 cultivators of true virtue within a year." A year? Hearing Devil's Knight's words, everyone's expression changed, and they were filled with shock and doubt. The Gia sect had risen for thousands of years, but it had yet to dominate the 7 cultivators of true virtue. The Fontian sect had declined for a long time. So why did Devil's Knight say that he could make the Fontian sect dominate the 7 cultivators of true virtue within a year? If someone else had said such words, everyone would have already burst into laughter. However, since Devil's Knight said it, it seemed to be possible. After all, Devil's Knight had already proven his strength to everyone. His words could not be judged by common sense. Niet Tian's gaze slightly sank, and he lightly said, "If the Fontian sect wants to dominate the 7 cultivators of true virtue, the Gia sect should be the first target to be eradicated." Devil's Knight immediately understood Niet Tian's meaning. The corners of his mouth curled into a confident smile as he said, 3 months. In just 3 months, the Gia sect will no longer exist in the sacred world of 7 cultivators. This, Wind Demon's expression changed, and he was shocked speechless. Could Devil's Knight be a lunatic? Eradicating the Gia sect, which had been entrenched in the 7th cultivator of true cultivators for hundreds of thousands of years, in just 3 months, wasn't that just nonsense? After all, the Fontian sect had been in decline for a long time. Its previous foundation had been almost exhausted. He really didn't know where Devil's Knight got his confidence from. 3 months. Niet Tian pondered for a moment, then smiled faintly and said, "How about this? Let's use 3 months as the deadline. If the Fontian sect could destroy, annex, or subdue the Gia sect within 3 months, the Wind Demon's clan would have to rely on the Fontian sect. If not, the 2 sides would form an alliance, and their status would be equal. How about it?" "Okay." Devil's Knight smiled faintly and readily agreed. Wind Demon's expression sank, and he looked at Feng Yaoxing and the others. The Wind Demons and the others did not speak, and the atmosphere was somewhat silent. In the end, it was Feng Yaoxing who broke the silence and took the lead to say, "Patriarch, I think that the Fate Sect's Beacon Emperor's proposal is not impossible." This was a concession, and it even carried a strong sense of humiliation. However, this was a step that had to be taken. Feng Yaoxing opened his mouth, not because he was weaker than the others, but because he understood the depth of the situation better than the others. This was the most Niet Tian could do for them. Devil's Knight was too strong, and his strength was strange and unfathomable. He easily created the first puppet, and no one knew whether there would be a second puppet, a third puppet, and so on in the future. If the Wind Demon's clan did not accept Niet Tian's proposal, it would definitely anger Devil's Knight. Since Devil's Knight could say that he would subdue the Gia sect within 3 months, no one knew how powerful the Fontian Soul sect behind it was. In other words, if the Fontian sect could really subdue the Gia sect, then the Wind Demon's clan would not suffer a loss if they relied on the Fontian sect. I agree. Wind Demon was silent for a long time, but he finally opened his mouth and added, "However, within these 3 months, the Wind Demon's clan will only be an ally of the Fontian sect, not a vassal." "Okay." Devil's Knight smiled faintly, and there was even a hint of pride in his expression. Everything was within his expectations and under his control. Next, both parties signed an alliance agreement. The Fontian sect side was signed by Devil's Knight and Niet Tian, while the Wind Demon's clan side was signed by Wind Demon and Feng Yaoxing. The alliance agreement has been signed. From now on, we are a family. There were 2 copies of the alliance agreement, and each party held one. Devil's Knight kept the alliance agreement and looked at Wind Demon with a playful smile. "Am I right, Wind Demon clan leader?" Wind Demon's expression was very ugly, but he still nodded. "Wind Demon clan leader, this is the letter that one clan leader asked me to bring to you." At this time, Niet Tian handed over a letter. It was given to Wen Luan by Wen Xiang, and Wen Luan asked him to deliver it on his behalf. Wind Demon took the letter, but he did not read it directly. Instead, he put it away. "The alliance is done. We will leave now." Niet Tian smiled faintly and was ready to leave. He visited the one clan and the Wind Demon's clan one after another. Although the results were a little unexpected, it was overall not bad. Niet Tian was ready to return to Feng Tian Fate sect immediately. Moreover, there were still many things that needed to be clarified between him and Devil's Night. Wait. However, Devil's Night did not want to leave. There was a sinister smile on his face as he looked at Wind Demon with a playful look. Wind Demon clan leader, I heard that the power of your clan's bloodline is called the night-devouring snow cicada, right? Wind Demon frowned and was obviously a little wary. Why did Beacon's Emperor suddenly ask about this? I'm a little curious. Devil's Night smiled again and said, I heard that the Wind Demon's clan cultivates a strange ancient martial art called the Eight Ghost Wind Dance. Only those with the night-devouring snow cicada bloodline can cultivate the Eight Ghost Wind Dance. A long time ago, the Wind Demon's clan relied on the Eight Ghost Wind Dance to become a heavenly clan. However, for some unknown reason, the night-devouring snow cicada bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan suddenly weakened. This also caused the overall strength of the Wind Demon's clan to weaken. In the end, they could only fall to a hidden clan in the Seventh Cultivator's sacred world. However, in the last few thousand years, the night-devouring snow cicada bloodline of the Wind Demon's clan suddenly became stronger. The Wind Demon's clan also became stronger. This might be the reason why the Wind Demon's clan chose to enter the world again. This emperor isn't wrong, right? Wind Demon frowned, and his expression became very unsightly. He said in a cold tone, It seems that the Beacon's Emperor has done a very detailed investigation on our Wind Demon's clan. I wonder what is the purpose of the Beacon's Emperor doing this? To help you. Devil's Night smiled faintly. His eyes were somewhat deep, as if hiding in extremely terrifying darkness. Help us? Wind Demon frowned and sneered. This clan leader can't tell that the Beacon's Emperor is a warm-hearted person. This emperor just said that since we have formed an alliance, we are naturally a family. Devil's Night smiled again and said, This emperor doesn't want the Fontion sex allies to be too weak. Oh, Wind Demon's expression became even more gloomy. The disdain shown by Devil's Night made him extremely disgusted. However, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a deep voice, I wonder how the Beacon's Emperor plans to help us. Moonlight Chalcedony. The corner of Devil's Night's mouth twitched as he said a name. How do you know? When Wind Demon heard these words, his expression suddenly changed and he was stunned on the spot. Chapter 4439. When the Wind Demon heard Devil's Night mention the Moonlight Chalcedony, he was stunned on the spot. The elders of the Wind Demon clan also looked at Devil's Night in shock. Moonlight Chalcedony was the crux of a night-devouring snow cicada bloodline. However, this was the Wind Demon clan's greatest secret. Not to mention others, even among the Wind Demon clan, only the core higher-ups knew about it. How did Devil's Night know about the Moonlight Chalcedony? Nietion frowned and was secretly curious. What exactly was the Moonlight Chalcedony? Was it very important to the Wind Demon clan? The Moonlight Chalcedony is a naturally formed liquid amber. Its essence is a special liquid crystal formed by the condensation of the moonlight and the tears of the ice spring under special circumstances. Devil's Night smiled faintly and explained the Moonlight Chalcedony. Nietion half understood and didn't know anything about the Moonlight Chalcedony, amber, and tears of the ice spring. He guessed that the Moonlight Chalcedony should be some kind of light, like a rainbow. As for amber and the tears of the ice spring, they should be some kind of treasure. You actually know the essence of the Moonlight Chalcedony. Wind Demon's eyes trembled, and he was even more shocked. Of course. Devil's Night smiled and said, The night-devouring snow cicada bloodline is an extremely strange, desolate bloodline. Unfortunately, only under the nourishment of the Moonlight Chalcedony can the night-devouring snow cicada become powerful. The reason why your Wind Demon clan was able to rank in the heavens was because of the Moonlight Chalcedony. It's just that later, the Moonlight Chalcedony became less and less, so the Wind Demon clan declined. I guess that the rise of your Wind Demon clan is also related to the Moonlight Chalcedony. Wind Demon calmed down slightly, and the shock on his face was replaced by coldness. He said solemnly, This is just your guess. Devil's Night smiled sinisterly and said, Wind Demon Clan Leader. Let me guess again. The moonlight chalcedony used by the Wind Demon Clan should be left behind by your ancestors. There should only be a very small amount, and is completely insufficient to support the rise of the Wind Demons Clan. This was also why the Wind Demons Clan urgently needed to find a terrifying ally, right? Wind Demon had just calmed down when his expression changed again. He was speechless. Without a doubt, Devil's Knight was right again. Wind Ghost Clan Leader, judging from your reaction, I should be right. Devil's Knight chuckled and said, Actually, this is nothing. The Wind Demons are taking advantage of the fact that they still have some strength to find a powerful ally to rely on. There's nothing wrong with that. But, Clan Chief Wind Ghost, you can't possibly really think that a clan can maintain its peak for a long time by relying on other forces, right? This Wind Demon's face turned ugly. The corner of his mouth twitched, unable to say a word. As the saying goes, if a person wants to stand firm, he doesn't need to find a backer, but to turn himself into a mountain. The same principle naturally applied to clans. The Wind Demons clan did have some strength now and could be relied on by some major forces. However, if one day the Wind Demons clan declined, would they still be valued? However, Wind Demon had no choice because the Wind Demons clan's moonlight chalcedony was indeed very little. Not to mention supporting the Wind Demons clan to rise again, it was not even enough to support the Wind Demons clan for a generation. Devil's Knight was very right. The moonlight chalcedony that the Wind Demons clan used now was left behind by their ancestors in case the clan needed it. However, although these moonlight chalcedony were stored using a secret method, the quality had dropped a lot because it had been left for too long. If it was not used, the moonlight chalcedony would completely lose its effect in less than 10,000 years. Wind Demon could not understand why Devil's Knight knew so much about the Wind Demons clan. Could it be that Devil's Knight came for the Wind Demons clan? Wind Demon clan head, you don't have to be nervous. I don't have any ill intentions towards the Wind Demons clan. Devil's Knight seemed to see through what Wind Demon was thinking and said with a faint smile, I really want to help you all. Moreover, I know the secret method to develop the moonlight chalcedony. Really? Hearing Devil's Knight's words, Wind Demon could no longer remain calm. His eyes immediately became blazing, and he even showed unconcealable greed. Moonlight chalcedony was a naturally formed item. Back then, the Wind Demons clan rose to power because they discovered a group of caves rich in moonlight chalcedony. However, the moonlight chalcedony in the group of caves was not inexhaustible either. As time passed, the moonlight chalcedony was used up, and the Wind Demons clan naturally declined. Of course, when the Wind Demons clan was powerful, they once sent people to specially investigate the essence of the moonlight chalcedony too, attempting to find a method to artificially develop the moonlight chalcedony. But sadly, at that time, the Wind Demons clan invited several dozen top-notch alchemists in the world, and they all did not comprehend the method to develop the moonlight chalcedony. Now, Devil's Knight actually said that he knew the secret method to develop the moonlight chalcedony. How could it not make Wind Demon agitated? Not just Wind Demon. The other Wind Demon clan members also started trembling with heated gazes, looking at Devil's Knight attentively. Tion's brows furrowed, already roughly understanding the context of the matter. Moonlight chalcedony was an essential item for the Wind Demons clan to cultivate the power of bloodline, and the Wind Demons clan already did not have much moonlight chalcedony. Right at this time, Devil's Knight appeared, and he even knew the secret method to develop the moonlight chalcedony. Such a coincidental matter. Was it really just a coincidence? Faintly, Tion felt that Devil's Knight was definitely brewing some grand scheme. Devil's Knight smiled faintly and naturally would not say the method to develop the moonlight chalcedony. Instead, he took out a finger-sized medicinal bottle, passed it to Wind Demon, and said, Wind Demon clan leader, what do you think about this bottle of moonlight chalcedony? Wind Demon's gaze trembled intensely. The hand holding the moonlight chalcedony medicinal bottle was also trembling slightly. He practically opened the medicinal bottle with trembling hands. Immediately, a fragrance overflowed, the fragrance assailing the nostrils, filling the entire assembly hall. When Yetian sniffed this scent, he immediately felt refreshed, as if every pore on his body opened up, wanting to absorb the essence within. While the reactions of Wind Demon and the rest were even more exaggerated. The expressions of the Wind Demon's clan members were lifeless, like they were in a dream or fantasy, as if they were situated in a dream. The bloodline power within their bodies, under the stimulation of the moonlight chalcedony, was actually pulsing nonstop, like a vicious wolf seeing a lamb. After a long time, Wind Demon and the rest finally calmed down slightly. Extremely reluctantly, they capped the medicinal bottle and returned it to Devil's Night. Wind Demon clan leader, this small bottle of moonlight chalcedony, just take it as my greeting gift to your Wind Demon clan. But Devil's Night smiled and indicated to Wind Demon to keep it, then said, "Now you should believe that I have the method to develop the moonlight chalcedony, right? Believe. Wind Demon chuckled as he put away the medicinal bottle, nodded repeatedly, and praised. This clan leader has never seen moonlight chalcedony with such a rich aura before. Lord Beacon Emperor truly has the hands of heaven's work, seizing the good fortune of heaven and earth. This time, he removed the two words soul ancestor from his address of Devil's Night and added the word Lord behind it. The change in attitude was so fast that it left one speechless. Wind Demon clan leader, I'll tell you the truth. This small bottle of moonlight chalcedony is just a little bit of waste liquid left behind during the process of refining the moonlight chalcedony. What I possess in my hands is the purest moonlight chalcedony. Devil's Night laughed, an unusual light surging in his eyes. Chapter 4440. What? The moment Devil's Night's words faded, a shrill, strange cry sounded out in the Wind Demon clan's conference hall. This strange cry was precisely emitted by Wind Demon. He seriously could not control his emotions. That was why he directly cried out. The other members of the Wind Demon clan looked at Devil's Night with dazed faces. That expression was like looking at the god in their hearts. Nyetian had a dumbfounded look. Was the moonlight chalcedony really so important to the Wind Demon clan? Actually, Nyetian was not a member of the Wind Demon clan, so he was unable to understand the significance of the moonlight chalcedony to the Wind Demon clan. The Wind Demon clan's bloodline power was the devouring night snow cicada. But if the devouring night snow cicada did not have the nourishment of the moonlight chalcedony, it would be akin to a useless bloodline. It could not even compare to the most ordinary bloodline power. Furthermore, because of the existence of the devouring night snow cicada bloodline, the Wind Demon clan was also unable to breed other bloodlines. This way, under the circumstances where there was no moonlight chalcedony, not only could the devouring night snow cicada not become a help to the Wind Demon clan, it became the greatest obstruction instead. One might ask, those great family clans and great factions, as well as top powerhouses and pinnacle existences, which one did not possess powerful bloodline power. If there was no bloodline power, under the circumstances of the same realm, they would absolutely be crushed by the other party. Just take Nyetian, for example. The reason why he was powerful was precisely because of the power of stars and the power of gods and demons within his body. If Nyetian did not have the power of stars and the power of gods and demons, then the current him would not be much stronger than martial artists of the same realm. This was the importance of bloodline power. Without bloodline power, one was bound to be unable to become a great family clan. The reason why the Wind Demon clan declined so quickly was because they did not have the moonlight chalcedony. And at this moment, Devil's Night claimed that he had the purest moonlight chalcedony in his hands. How could this not make the Wind Demon and the rest agitated? Sir Beacon Emperor, is what you said true? After a long while, Wind Demon finally calmed down and asked with a trembling voice, "Are you still doubting me?" Devil's Night chuckled and said, "Actually, your Wind Demon's clan has great potential. That's because what you're cultivating is the rare primordial ancient martial technique. But your bloodline power is too weak. Don't tell me. In order to bring out the true might of the 8 Ghost Winds dance, there are very few people who can completely grasp the 8 Ghost Winds dance. This Wind Demon's face stiffened, and he could not help but feel a little awkward. Indeed, there were only a few people in the entire Wind Demon's clan who could completely master the 8-wind ghostly dance. Even at the peak of the Wind Demon's clan, not many people in the clan could truly comprehend the profoundness of the 8-gale ghost dance. Is the great desolate ancient martial technique very powerful? Nietion frowned. He could not help but feel interested. Judging from Devil's Knight's words, the 8 Ghost Wind dance seemed to be very terrifying. Now that he thought about it, when he fought with Feng Kun, the latter's night devouring realm was indeed very powerful. Furthermore, Nietion sensed that Feng Kun did not release the power of the night devouring realm. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would have won that battle. As far as I know, the night devouring snow cicada's bloodline is divided into 9 cries. Devil's Knight glanced at Wind Demon and continued, but in the Wind Demon's clan, not to mention the 9 cries bloodline, even the 3 cries bloodline is extremely rare, right? That's right. Wind Demon was completely convinced at this moment. He nodded deeply and said, currently, in our Wind Demon's clan, the one with the strongest bloodline power is my son, Feng Kun, who possesses the 5 cries bloodline. However, as he spoke, Wind Demon could not help but look at Nietion. Feng Kun's bloodline was the strongest before, but after the battle with Nietion, it was almost crippled. Feng Kun only used the night devouring realm, which slightly damaged his bloodline, but it's not impossible to recover. Devil's Knight smiled and said confidently. Nietion furrowed his brows. He did not expect Devil's Knight to know about Feng Kun's matter. It seemed that Devil's Knight had been in the Wind Ghost Valley for a long time. He should have personally witnessed the battle between Nietion and Feng Kun. What did you say? Wind Demon's expression was awkward. When he suddenly heard Devil's Knight's words, his expression suddenly changed and he exclaimed, I can help him recover Feng Kun's bloodline. Moyi smiled faintly and said calmly, Sir Beacon Emperor, are you serious? Wind Demon's eyes trembled violently. It seemed that he was about to cry. Feng Kun was the #1 genius of the Wind Ghost race. Furthermore, he was the son he doted on the most. If he could restore Feng Kun's bloodline, it wouldn't be impossible for the Wind Ghost race to bow down to him. Of course, Devil's Knight's expression was indifferent. He then smiled and said, But I am not helping your Wind Demon's clan for free. Wind Demon's eyes trembled. His expression stiffened for a moment before returning to normal. He said, Of course, if Sir Beacon Emperor has any conditions, just say it. As long as I can do it, I will not refuse. Hee. Devil's Knight laughed strangely. He stared straight at Wind Demon and said, Actually, this matter is very easy for Wind Demon Clan leader. It just depends on whether Wind Demon Clan leader is willing or not. Wind Demon's eyes trembled and his heart couldn't help but sink. The more Devil's Knight said this, the less confident he was. Under normal circumstances, the easier it was said to be, the harder it was to do. I want to recruit a batch of young geniuses for the Fengtian sect. I want to pick some from the Wind Demon's clan. I wonder if Wind Demon Clan leader is willing? Devil's Knight smiled again and said lightly, Recruiting disciples from the Wind Demon's clan? Wind Demon's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, That's easy. Sir Beacon Emperor, just pick however many people you want. Nietion's expression changed slightly. He guessed that Devil's Knight's request was not that simple. Recruiting disciples from the Wind Demon's clan was obviously a good thing. Devil's Knight didn't need to mention it as a condition. Wind Demon Clan leader, I don't need a lot of people. I only need 900. Devil's Knight smiled and said, And these 900 people will be taught by me personally. However, at this point, Devil's Knight couldn't help but pause for a moment. However what? Wind Demon's heart skipped a beat, and he asked anxiously. However, from now on, these 900 people will have nothing to do with the Wind Demon's clan. Devil's Knight smiled again. His eyes instantly became a little cold as he stared straight at Wind Demon. This Wind Demon's expression changed, and he couldn't say anything for a moment. How could he not understand that Devil's Knight wasn't recruiting disciples for the Fengtian sect? Instead, he wanted to take away 900 people from the Wind Demon's clan. And from now on, these 900 people would have nothing to do with the Wind Demon's clan at all. Anyone could tell that Devil's Knight definitely didn't want these 900 people for good. After a moment of silence, Wind Demon asked in a deep voice, "If my Wind Demon's clan sends these 900 people to Sir Beacon Emperor, will Sir Beacon Emperor be able to tell us the research method of the lunar rainbow chalcedony?" Of course, Devil's Knight smiled faintly and said, "I'll send someone to send the research method over and teach you. How about that?" "Good." Wind Demon's eyes were gloomy and cold. After a few seconds of silence, he spat out a word. Chapter 44-41. Finally, Wind Demon agreed to Devil's Knight's condition. The lives of 900 people in exchange for a bright future for the clan. This deal was worth it. But would these 900 people feel that it was worth it? After a moment of silence, Great Elder Feng Yaoxing stepped forward and asked with an ugly expression, "Sir Beacon Emperor, what kind of people are you looking for?" The other elders' expressions were also a little ugly. Exchanging the lives of the clan's descendants for the clan's future made them feel a deep sense of shame. "I will personally pick those under 16 years old." Devil's Knight smiled faintly with a confident expression. Under 16 years old? Feng Yaoxing's expression changed, as he was quite surprised. Wind Demon and the other elders were also stunned as they looked at Devil's Knight in confusion. Devil's Knight actually wanted children under 16 years old. What was he trying to do? "Why, can't I?" Devil's Knight didn't care about everyone's surprise and asked with a gloomy expression. Wind Demon revealed a troubled expression and said, "Sir Beacon Emperor, to be honest, the Wind Demon clan has been in decline for a long time. The number of people in the clan has also decreased. There might not be 900 children under 16 years old. Then, under 30 years old." Devil's Knight thought for a moment and said with a deep voice, "All right." Wind Demon was silent for a moment and finally nodded. Since the decision had been made, it was useless to be indecisive. He would just treat it as these 900 people sacrificing themselves for the clan. "Wind Demon clan leader, please get someone to prepare. I will go pick the people later." Devil's Knight was very blunt and said directly. Wind Demon agreed and asked an elder to make the arrangements. Then he asked anxiously, "Sir Beacon Emperor, may I know when you plan to treat Feng Kun? Bring him here." Devil's Knight said with a smile. "Ah, all right." Wind Demon was stunned for a moment, almost unable to react. He immediately nodded and had an elder lead the way. Nietian looked at Devil's Knight, not knowing what the latter wanted to do. It was obvious that Devil's Knight's goal was not simple. Moreover, after meeting Devil's Knight this time, Nietian felt that the former had changed a lot. The previous Devil's Knight was even darker, the kind of pure and direct darkness. However, at this moment, apart from the darkness, there was an even greater gloominess in the demonic night. In fact, it had even become extremely shrewd. It had to be said that Devil's Knight had grown a lot in such a short period of time. This kind of growth was not only in strength, but also in temperament and willpower. A moment later, Feng Kun was brought over and placed on the floor of the hall. He was still unconscious. "Sir Beacon Emperor, please make your move." Wind Demon couldn't wait any longer. Devil's Knight wasn't in a hurry. He looked at Feng Kun for a long time and suddenly said, "Wind Demon Chief, I have a small selfish wish. I wonder if Wind Demon Chief agrees?" "Sir Beacon Emperor, please say it." Wind Demon was very anxious as he was afraid that Devil's Knight would suddenly stop treating Feng Kun. "I want to take Feng Kun as my disciple." Devil's Knight looked up at Wind Demon and said seriously, "This?" Wind Demon was stunned and couldn't react for a moment. "Wind Demon Chief, do you think it's not good?" Devil's Knight frowned and asked. Of course not, of course not." Wind Demon quickly denied and said, "It's Feng Kun's fortune to be a disciple of Sir Beacon Emperor. I agree on his behalf." Okay. Devil's Knight smiled again and immediately started to treat Feng Kun. Waves of spiritual energy surged out from Devil's Knight's fingertips and formed runes in the air that then seeped into Feng Kun's body. Nietan sensed Feng Kun's aura and was shocked to find that the latter's damaged bloodline was actually recovering at a fast pace. This is the power of the soul line, Fat Cat said in a deep voice. Isn't the soul line the power of the spiritual energy? How can it repair the damaged bloodline? Nietan was puzzled. Although he didn't know much about the Heavenly Path Soul Lattice, he knew that the Soul Lattice contained the power of the spiritual energy. How could it be helpful to the bloodline? I find it strange, too. Fat Cat shook her head and said, perhaps there's something strange about the night devouring Snow Cicada's bloodline. Nietan nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. After a while, Devil's Knight took a deep breath and finished the treatment. At the same time, Feng Kun woke up. Nietan. As soon as he opened his eyes and glanced around, he saw Nietan and was so startled that he jumped to his feet, his face filled with terror. So the number one prodigy is such a coward. Nietan smiled helplessly. I'm not dead. Feng Kun heaved a sigh of relief. He looked around again and finally calmed down, but he was still in shock. He clearly remembered that Nietan broke his night-devouring boundary. So why wasn't he dead? Kun, you're not dead, and your bloodline has recovered. Wind Demon was very happy and laughed. He had already sensed that Feng Kun's bloodline had recovered and his aura had even become stronger. Emoyi was indeed not an ordinary person. He had heaven-defying methods. Feng Kun was stunned for a while before he calmed down. He suddenly saw Devil's Knight and noticed that he looked very similar to Nietan. He asked, who are you? Good disciple, hurry up and greet your master. Emoyi clasped his hands behind his back and said with a faint smile, Master? Feng Kun's expression changed, and he sneered. Who do you think you are? How dare you ask me to be your master? Kun, don't be rude. Wind Demon's expression changed, and he shouted. It's fine. Devil's Knight waved his hand and looked at Feng Kun. Feng Kun, do you think that my cultivation level is too low and I'm not qualified to be your master? I, Feng Kun, am the top genius of the Wind Demon's clan. I've reached the 9th Celestial Enlightenment Realm, and I'm one step away from the Celestial Ancestor Realm. You're only in the 9th Celestial Tribulation Realm. You're just an ant in my eyes. What makes you think you can be my master? If it weren't for the presence of Feng Gue, Ling Yun, and the others, he would have already killed this arrogant brat in front of him. You're right. Emoyi couldn't help but laugh. He continued, but one's realm is only one aspect of strength. My cultivation level is low, but that doesn't mean I'm weak. Do you believe that I can make you kneel down and kowtow to me right now? You're courting death. Feng Kun's expression darkened, and he roared. His chi surged. Feng Kun kneel. However, in the next moment, Emoyi shouted loudly, his face gloomy and murderous. Feng Kun's body shook, and he felt his soul trembling as if it was struck by lightning. His knees softened, and he knelt in front of Devil's Knight. What a powerful divine soul. Nietan's eyes flickered with astonishment. He could see that Devil's Knight was using his soul to force Feng Kun to kneel. This kind of absolute suppression was too terrifying. Even the best alchemists and sealing masters couldn't do it. It seemed like Devil's Knight's soul was more terrifying than Nietan had imagined.